The golden spear came crashing down. But before it hit Xie Qingyuan, it shattered and pulverized. It was smashed by a long rod surrounded by divine flames. Not far above Xie Qingyuan, a ferocious and domineering demon was standing there. It was Zhu Yang the Beast, who had once fought against Yi Futian. Behind him stood the principality of the demon ape clan from the heavenly mandate realm. They spread out and formed a line of defense as a ferocious aura erupted from them. They held long rods in their hands. They were standing in battle formation as if they were guarding and ensuring Xie Qingyuan's safety. Above the firmament, a group of cultivators dressed in blue was surrounded by golden radiance as they descended from the sky, looking extremely keen. These were the cultivators from the human divine palace. Like golden gods of war, they carried absolute dominance. The golden rays of light sprinkled down as those sharp divine arms came down for the kill, cutting through the void. Zhu Yang the Beast and other demonic cultivators resonated with the energy. He held the long rod and launched it high into the sky, which contained a supreme power. It shattered the void and blocked that group of incoming cultivators. Xie Qingyuan glanced at the battlefield, her robe fluttered. She continued with her task, rushing in another direction as the divine power of life enveloped the boundless space, continuing to heal the wounded. Buzz! Another spatial divine light pierced through the void. It was aimed at Xie Qingyuan. Although Zhu Yang and other great demons had blocked one group of attackers, many had taken notice of Xie Qingyuan by now and wanted to kill her. Quite a few top figures were trying to get to her themselves. The spatial divine light directly penetrated the void and pierced through the bodies of several cultivators. However, it continued moving forward, and its aim never veered from Xie Qingyuan. However, almost at the same moment, a terrifying gigantic palm print blasted down and collided with the divine light in the void. Suddenly, a violent sound came from the space, which could be heard clearly in the surrounding areas. An extremely tyrannical aura permeated, and another group of cultivators appeared behind Xie Qingyuan. These cultivators turned into a battle matrix and moved forward. Until now, they had not made a move. It seemed that their job was to solely protect Xie Qingyuan. Xie Qingyuan was a little surprised by this as well. She turned around to look and recognized the people protecting her from behind. They were the cultivators from the Lost Clan. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. The cultivators of the Lost Clan had been included in the Great Army of Heavenly Mandate. This force was capable of competing with the forces from all sides in the past, and after Yi Futian's training, their strength had been further improved. Furthermore, they had gone through the test of battles and had been on the edge of death many times over before they were able to return to the land of the original realm. Their resilience was tried and true. And such a force was protecting her. Xie Qingyuan suddenly found that a complex emotion filled her heart. Of course, she knew who had arranged all this. Who else could have commanded such a mighty force? In a major battle like this, everyone was standing in the middle of life and death, and no one had absolute certainty of their survival. On the raging battlefield, there was such a powerful force like this protecting her. Could this be a way of gauging her importance in his heart? Or maybe because he felt that he owed her? Everyone, don't worry about me. This is a waste of your combat power. Xie Qingyuan turned around and said to the cultivators of the Lost Clan. Being a top cultivator herself with strong combat effectiveness, a mighty team such as the Lost Clan should not be wasted guarding her. Princess Xie has powerful healing ability and plays a great role on the battlefield. Of course, we must ensure the princess's safety, an elder from the Lost Clan replied. Princess, just focus on doing what you do best, don't pay any attention to us. This kind of explanation somehow seemed to make sense. However, the situation on Xie Qingyuan's side seemed to have attracted the attention of many people. In the sky above the battlefield, a group of cultivators from the Divine Palace were watching Xie Qingyuan closely. They realized that Xie Qingyuan seemed to be the only one on the battlefield who enjoyed some security while no one else enjoyed the same kind of privilege. More importantly, she was an expert at the divine power of life and possessed a very powerful ability to heal. Kill her. Above the firmament, a dull sound rang out, resounding throughout the battlefield. Suddenly many cultivators looked in Xie Qingyuan's direction. For a time, mighty cultivators swarmed in Xia Qingyuan's direction, turning into a fearsome army. The Great Army of Heaven Court and the Great Army of Heavenly Mandate also noticed this movement, as they focused their attention on Xia Qingyuan's direction as well. Many cultivators were turning to Xia Qingyuan as the new target, especially those cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Army. They all knew that Yi Futian had a special relationship with Xia Qingyuan. Once upon a time, Yi Futian had first emerged out of Emperor Xia's realm and was cared for by Emperor Xia and Xia Qingyuan. The two of them spent a lot of time together, and many people thought they were a couple. Blinding and dazzling divine lights pierced through the battlefield, and they turned out to be a series of arrows. Huang Zhouge had led a group of cultivators to cover the sky with arrows. These divine arrows traversed heaven and earth continuously and took out many cultivators instantaneously. Those cultivators above the firmament turned into balls of fire and fell from the sky. The sight was astoundingly tragic. However, this turn of events further accentuated the importance of Xia Qingyuan. Cultivators from the human divine palace converged in this direction. They were all determined to take Xia Qingyuan down and kill her. In a moment, a vast battlefield quickly formed around Xia Qingyuan, and this battlefield was full of destructive storms. Above the sky, some divine swords penetrated heaven and earth, turning into a beam of infinite proportion, piercing the sky from top to bottom. The sound of destruction was heard without ceasing, and the cultivators from the heaven realm were directly penetrated by the swords and died instantly. These terrifying divine swords dominated the fate of all beings in this world, passing through many obstacles and aiming directly at Xia Qingyuan. At this time, a full moon appeared, and the moonlight sprinkled down on those divine swords. These divine swords seemed to be sealed in ice as their speed suddenly slowed down. But more than that, many cultivators above the firmament felt an extreme chill. It was the divine power of Yin that had frozen the world. Time and space seemed to stand still under the power of Yin, and those who did not comprehend this divine power were trapped in its power. Buzz! The divine arrows bloomed in the sky, piercing the void. Incomparably radiant divine flames bloomed above the void. The radiant arrows shot by Huang Zhouge directly pierced through many cultivators. It seemed as if they had combined the power of the solar and the yin. Although this divine power was not the divine power of solar, it was not too far behind. In a brief instant, more than 1,000 cultivators fell from the void. It was a most horrific and petrifying sight. Bang! A terrifying divine power erupted as the cultivators from the human divine palace looked down at the area below. They saw a very beautiful woman who was the embodiment of feminine beauty. Like a goddess in the darkest night, the divine power of yin bloomed from her. In an instant, she had frozen the space, forcing the space to come to a standstill. This was the goddess of Yu Divine Palace from the Shadow Realm who had realized the divine power of yin with the help of Yi Futian. She now unleashed the brilliance of the moon, which transformed into the power of yin to assist the fight by freezing the space. Fierce battles broke out all around Xia Qingyuan as many top figures from the human divine palace had gone over there to attack. Even the army from the heavenly court had headed that way to render their support. For a time, people continued to perish in the area around Xia Qingyuan. Xia Qingyuan was in the middle of the battlefield, and many people were guarding her. Her most direct guardians were the army of the Lost Clan. They guarded the outer circle and did not allow any attackers to get close to her. However, when she saw that the people protecting her kept on dying without her even having a chance of saving them, Xia Qingyuan just felt a sense of sadness in her heart. She chose not to pursue the imperial realm because she wanted to save more people, but it did not go as she had imagined. Instead, it was because of her that more deaths had occurred. A look of sadness flashed across her eyes, and suddenly the polarities of life and death began revolving around her body, alternating with one another. An iciness now bloomed from her beautiful eyes as endless marks surged around her, all of which were the marks transformed by the power of life and death. As soon as she moved, Xia Qingyuan rushed out of the battlefield, no longer amid the crowd that was meant to protect her. She was also a top cultivator who had the opportunity to step onto the path of the great emperors. If not for this battle, she would have continued her pursuit of the imperial realm. Kill. When they saw Xia Qingyuan rush out on her own, Many cultivators around came from all directions to encircle her. But they saw Xia Qingyuan merely cast a glance at the as countless lights of catastrophe seemed to erupt at the same time, turning into marks of death. Pa, pa, pa. Sounds of bloodshed were heard continuously. As soon as the marks of death hit their bodies, they would worm into the bodies, turning all traces of life into death in an instant. Death was all but inevitable, as it turned their bodies into pitch-black masses that fell from the sky. In a very brief moment, many cultivators fell from the sky as if the god of death had descended upon them. Those cultivators who were behind fighting forward had to stop involuntarily after witnessing the shocking sight in front of them. There was a deep fear in their eyes as they fixed their gazes on Xia Qingyuan. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. Previously, Xia Qingyuan was a savior, but now she had become a murderer with completely different prowess. But Xia Qingyuan did not care about the thoughts that ran through their little heads. Her body turned into a bolt of lightning as she smashed into the midst of the cultivators from the human realm. She was surrounded by endless lights of catastrophe, and those lights were like sword marks that carried a terrifying breath of death, which seemed to inflict immediate death as soon as they touched anyone. Watch for those marks around her, someone in the human realm cautioned the others gravely. Xia Qingyuan's marks were the marks of the god of death. Anyone unlucky enough to be touched by them would be killed right away, as their life force was being swallowed up in an instant. As soon as they were buried by that will of death, they were already dead men. Those cultivators who had not comprehended divine powers had no way of stopping it. As soon as they were touched, they would die without a doubt. In the distance, Futian was calmly observing everything that happened on the battlefield. All the battles were imprinted in his mind, including the battle in which Xia Qingyuan was engaged. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. From that spatial passageway, the cultivators from the human realm poured into this world continuously and without ceasing. They were everywhere in the heavenly imperial city and carved a path all the way to the outside of the city. The cultivators from the human realm seemed to be deeply affected by the human ancestor. All of them displayed a strong murderous intent, wanting to destroy the heaven realm and unify the 9 states. Why don't you go back to cultivate? I'll keep an eye over here. A soft and gentle voice spoke up next to Futian. It was Hua Jiyu, who was standing next to him. Very well. Futian nodded in agreement. And with a thought, an avatar suddenly appeared. His person left and departed to the small world. This avatar of his could spy on the outside world, and if anything happened, he would know right away. The war broke out and swept through the lands of the 7 realms. Countless cultivators were sucked into this significant battle involving the 7 realms, and no one could escape. The great army of the devil world began to engage the great army of the divine prefecture in an all-out war. The dark world and the empty divine realm armies were also involved in a full-scale war with the world of Buddhism. On the mainland of the dark world, a barefoot monk was walking on the river Styx, walking forward, step by step. At the moment, this dark world seemed relatively peaceful by comparison. On the contrary, the 7 realms were now transformed into hell. This monk's appearance was dignified and solemn, incomparably sacred. The light of Buddha lingered around his body. He walked along the river Styx and, moving forward steadily, came to an island. The island was tranquil as if it was unaware of what was happening in the outside world. The monk stepped onto the island with bare feet. This was the island of light in the dark world. There was no strife and no hatred here. Futian had come here once. The monk saw the virgin who resided on the island. She was teaching the children quietly as always, as if the disputes on the outside world had nothing to do with her. The children were a little curious when they saw a strange monk here and could not help but look at the monk. The monk smiled at them and watched the woman quietly. What business does the master have here? The woman finally asked the monk, unable to hold back any longer. You should know me. The monk saluted, his hands clasped together. Surely the master jests. We have never met before. How could I know you? The woman responded calmly. Amitabha. The monk put his hands together and said to the woman, You desired a pure land with absolute light, but where there are people, it is doomed to rife with disputes. Even Buddhist holy lands cannot be spared, So how can there be such a thing as an absolute pure land? This here is the pure land, said the woman. No need to deceive yourself, said the monk, as he waved his hands. Suddenly imageries appeared upon the lake. These imageries were of wars on the lands of the 7 realms. There was destruction everywhere, countless people perishing. Destruction will only bring darkness, not light, the monk continued. Is the current situation really the result that you wanted? Master has mistaken me for someone else. There was a sign of disturbance in the woman's eyes when she saw those images. I can see your fate, the monk said suddenly. The woman was stunned by his claim. Then, she looked at the monk curiously. Tell me. Death is salvation, the monk replied. Salvation? The woman looked at the monk and continued, I don't need salvation. The master best go elsewhere. Amitabha. The monk folded his hands together and said to the woman, even as the master of darkness, there is still light in your heart. There is no absolute darkness nor absolute light in this world. No matter the destructions or how it is reborn, the world is still the same, and only the law can change the world, not destruction and death. The woman's eyes sharpened as she stared at the monk and said, Can Omniscient really see the future? At this moment, her temperament suddenly became majestic. It contained an incomparably mighty solemnity. The monk in front of her was none other than the Buddha of destiny. The great paths are connected, and there is not much difference as they exist in the world, said the Buddha of destiny. If you want to find the person who led you into darkness, the answer lies in the human realm. In the dark world was a passageway that connected to the human realm. The human realm was known as the most perfect realm after the collapse of the heavenly path. Under the governance of the human ancestor, the human realm had been peaceful and stable, and its cultivators, likewise, were strong in strength. But now, cultivators from the human realm had flooded into the heaven realm and launched a war of invasion. At this time, in a city in the human realm, a beautiful woman appeared. This woman was dressed in white and looked pristine from head to toe. It was the woman from the dark world. The words of the Buddha of destiny had touched upon the answer she had always wanted to know, therefore, she came to the human realm. As soon as her thoughts moved, countless imageries from the city below came rushing into her mind. The human realm instigated the invasion of the heaven realm and ignited the fire of war in the heaven realm. However, this city inside the human realm was peaceful and quiet, forming a stark contrast with the chaos outside. Inside a particular clan, a few people were talking. A young woman asked, Master, how is the war outside progressing? Have we taken the heaven realm and the divine prefecture? The human ancestor led the powers of the entire human realm to launch the battle of the 7 realms. How could he fail? Victory is the only outcome for this war, her master responded with strong conviction in his voice. It sounded like whatever the human ancestor intended to do would indeed become a reality. The young woman nodded slightly, but then she seemed to have remembered something, as she continued, It's just that in this unprecedented warfare, which the human realm started, won't there be a lot of cultivators who perish because of it? And will there be a lot of innocent lives lost in the heaven realm and the divine prefecture because of it? Silly girl, her master laughed in a low voice, the human ancestor fought for the justice of the world, and naturally, there will be collateral damage. As long as the heaven realm and the divine prefecture are taken, the 7 realms will be united, and the world will thrive under the established order by the human ancestor. Then they will all thank the human ancestor, who will lead the world to the glory of your. This is the great path. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. The woman nodded lightly as if she was suddenly enlightened. She said with a smile, the human ancestor fought to save all living beings in the 7 realms. When the 7 realms are unified, everyone in the world will believe in the human ancestor. Unfortunately, my cultivation is still not advanced enough, or else I will also join the battle and go to the heaven realm to fight. Just as they were talking amongst themselves, suddenly another person appeared next to them. The 2 of them were startled as they fixed their attention on the woman who appeared out of nowhere. They saw the woman frown slightly, a puzzled look on her face as she focused her attention on this teacher and student duo who were talking to each other. Heaven and the divine prefecture each have its own established order already, especially the divine prefecture. Under the governance of Donghuang the Great, The divine prefecture is peaceful and prosperous, a place where many in the world had gone to seek the way and cultivate. Why do they need to be saved? The woman from the light path looked at the two. She continued, they already have their own orders. The invasion of the human realm has devastated the lives of many. How can this constitute justice? Who are you? The elder did not answer her question right away but stared at the woman with heightened alert as he posed the question. Answer my question, the woman said coldly as invisible coercion enveloped the other two, making them both feel a suffocating feeling. The young woman responded, Yi Futian of the Heaven Realm and Dong Huang the Great of the Divine Prefecture were weaving a conspiracy, and it will probably put the world in jeopardy. The human ancestor took charge to deal out justice and restore the order of the world. Naturally, this is the justice of the world. When she heard this answer, the woman in white felt a little bewildered. The other was not at a tender age of ignorance, and she was no beginner in cultivation. Yet, how could she say such unreasonable things? So the human ancestor must be in the right, she asked. The human ancestor is in the right, the woman responded. Are you disrespecting the human ancestor? The old man's eyes sharpened. Seeing the reaction of these two, the woman disappeared immediately and left as if she knew that it was useless to talk anymore with them. They were deeply entrenched in their belief, and it was impossible to persuade them otherwise. Somewhere else, in a major clan in the city, many cultivators were participating in a ritual. Their clan leader had died in the battle of the Heaven Realm. The whole clan was grieving. Our clan leader answered the call of the human ancestor to fight for the order of the world, the unification of the 7 realms, and for justice. Although he is no more, his spirit will live on forever. This solemn pronouncement resounded throughout the crowd. Everyone looked on gravely and knelt to pay their final respect to the dead. They were the descendants of the ones who died in battle. But they felt honored. It was as if they were proud of those who died fighting for such causes. I want to go to the Heaven Realm to fight in the war as well, someone said, and everyone else looked at the speaker. A man asked, your cultivation is not yet up to par. Don't you want to cultivate for a while longer before you go? I don't want to miss it, and I'm afraid such an opportunity will not be there in the future, the man replied, with a slight fanaticism in his voice. All these imageries were deeply imprinted in the woman's mind. Her divine consciousness covered the entire city, and she found that similar sights were happening everywhere. Some were even more outlandish than this. Cultivators of the human realm had this deep-rooted belief that this was a fight for the justice of the world and to restore the order of the world. The human ancestor was their absolute belief, which could not be shaken. Even if their loved ones died in the battle, their hatred was targeted squarely at the Heaven Realm, and they did not feel much sadness. The woman's face changed, and the calmness and tranquility she had moments ago were gone. At this moment, countless images appeared in her mind, and the past came alive vividly before her eyes. She remembered that in her cultivation journey, she, too, had gone astray and sunken into darkness when she was young. She had forsaken everything and was trapped in demonic barriers. In the name of cultivation, she lost her humanity. She would never forget the expressions on the faces of her parents when they perished at her hands. However, she seemed to be possessed at that time, continuing her walk deeper on the road of darkness and turning into the devil herself. She had seen all the darkness in the world and experienced hell on earth. Until one day, she became the master of darkness. All those things in the human realm now had a familiar feel, but even she knew that these cultivators were not under direct control. She disappeared, and she embarked to other places in the human realm. She found that it was the same everywhere. She had even seen something more exaggerated, like those cultivators from the human realm who believed in justice. They regarded invasion and killing as the right thing to do and as their life's mission. Human ancestor. At this time, the woman stood in the void, and she could only feel a biting iciness all over her body. In those quiet eyes, there was only darkness at this moment and an extremely palpable murderous intent. She had never liked the human ancestor. She thought that the human ancestor was hypocritical and pretended to be virtuous. From the human ancestor, she could see the shadow of her own master. At this moment, she had a feeling that she might be right and that it was not the shadow of her master. It was possible that human ancestor could be her master. The cultivator who brought him into the darkness was very likely the incarnation of the human ancestor. And only the human ancestor had such abilities. Crack! With her fists clenched, a frantic will of destruction was about to burst from her, but it was suppressed by her. It was an unforgettable hatred that she was feeling right now. The human ancestor was able to influence the thoughts and emotions of all the cultivators in the entire human realm. He had already advanced to such a terrifying place that the entire human realm completely belonged to him. Inside the human divine palace, there was peace at the moment. There were no conflicts or disputes. Everything appeared like a place out of this world that was exceptionally tranquility. In front of a palace, the human ancestor was chatting with a child. The scene was peaceful, in stark contrast to the war currently taking place in the Seven Realms. At this time, a strong fluctuation came from the sky. The human ancestor raised his head to look up before seeing a divine light descended upon the human divine palace, and someone landed directly in front of him. Immediately, the human ancestor stepped aside and bowed in reverence. A handsome and extraordinary young man appeared where the divine light fell. His body gradually solidified, and he emerged from that elusive shadow. It seemed as if he was not made of flesh and blood at all. The child looked at the young man curiously and seemed a little puzzled by him. He looked at the human ancestor and wondered why he was so respectful to this young man. Wasn't the human ancestor the master of the human realm? Master, the human ancestor bowed and called out, behaving extremely respectfully. It appeared as if the young man was the true master behind the scenes in the human realm. Sir, who are you? The child looked at the young man and asked. The young man's body gradually materialized, and he looked at the child with a gentle smile. He said, I am the human ancestor. Human ancestor. The child looked at him, then at the other human ancestor next to him, asking doubtfully, then who is he? Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. He is also the human ancestor, the young man responded. The human ancestor is not just one person, there are many human ancestors. It is because of this that we are considered the ancestors of mankind. The child scratched his head, still puzzled. He had no idea what the young man was talking about. The young man walked up to the child and rubbed his head. He stooped down and said with a smile, when I was younger, I was just like you, an ordinary person who suffered my share of bullying. That was the era when divine power ruled, when the gods controlled the order of the world. Mortals were like insects, and they could only look up to the gods. In the age of the gods held supreme power. When the gods fought, even the heavens were shattered, and many died. My parents, wife, and children were among the unfortunate who died, but even as they died, they did not get so much as a look of sympathy because the gods cared not for the deaths of mortals. In front of the gods, mortals are nothing but ants on the ground. No one would apologize to ants, nor would they have to pay for what they did to the ants. But fortunately, the gods died when the apocalyptic catastrophe destroyed all the gods. It was possible even for the gods who were high above to die. It was an era full of fear and hatred. It was the worst of eras, but it was also the best. When all the gods fell, everything in the world would be remade. Without the gods, mortals become the focus of the world. The young man spoke calmly as if he was telling a story from the ancient past. Gods are nothing, they are just mortals who control powerful forces. They can die, and they have emotions just like everyone else. They think like mortals, so mortals are gods, and everyone can become a god. Will I be able to do that too? The child asked innocently, looking at the young man with some longing in his eyes. Of course, the young man nodded. God and man, the divine and the mortals are one and the same. Having said that, he stretched out his hand with a drop of water in his palm and asked, What is this? A drop of water, the child replied. The water droplet floated into the air, and in that tiny water droplet, a terrifying force was being born, and the water droplet began to spin. It then flew through the air, and a building in the distance instantly collapsed and shattered, turning into a pile of dust. Behold, even a drop of water can have incredible power, but its essence is still of water. The young man looked at the child and continued, It's the same with people. There is no essential difference between mortals and gods, as they are the same. Do you understand? The child shook his head. The young man smiled as he rubbed the child's head again. He stood up and continued, "It's all right if you don't understand. Everyone in the world is stupid and ignorant because they are controlled by their emotions and desires and can never escape from their grip. This is the reason why this world needs to be remade." "But how?" the child asked curiously while his eyes were still fastened on the young man. His eyes were innocent. The young man looked down at him with a smile. "Create a world of the gods." "The world of the gods," the child murmured. "What kind of a world is the world of the gods?" But in the next moment, he stopped thinking. The young man's body turned into an intense light and shot directly into his body. The child's eyes revealed a pained look, and his face twisted. He looked at the elusive figure in front of him and opened his mouth as if shouting something out. There was despair and fear in his eyes as tears flooded out from them. He reached out his trembling hands, trying to grab something, but ultimately, he was unable to. Soon, the divine light submerged his body, and the look in the child's eyes changed. It was freezing, with a sense of contempt that disregarded everything as if there was no emotion. Afterward, he flexed his arm a bit, looked at it, and appeared satisfied. "It's all right," he said in a low voice. "Congratulations, Master," said the human ancestor next to him. "I'm the same as you," said the child. Immediately the human ancestor understood what he meant and nodded. The human divine palace was peaceful and harmonious at the moment, but the war that raged in the 7 realms was becoming more fierce. This war had swept through the 7 realms at an incredible speed. At this time, there was still a steady stream of cultivators who traveled across domains to participate in the war. In the Western world of Buddhism, the battles were incredibly fierce. The combined forces of the dark world and the empty divine realm swept through the Buddhist world. These battles were extremely costly and stained the Buddhist Pure Land with blood. The sound of chanting Buddhist scriptures could be heard everywhere on the land as if they were trying to redeem the dead. However, just when the war had reached a crescendo, a shocking turn of events occurred. The army of the dark world that invaded the Buddhist world suddenly stopped fighting against Buddhist cultivators. They now turned their attention to the cultivators of the empty divine realm, and the sudden slaughter caught these cultivators off guard. They had no chance to react to what was happening to them. Even the cultivators from the Buddhist world were completely stunned and did not understand what was happening. Why would the dark world and the empty divine realm suddenly turn on one another and start infighting? The Buddhist cultivators couldn't react for a while. They were content to stand on the sidelines, letting the others fight amongst themselves. It didn't take long for the battlefield in the Western world of Buddhism to undergo earth-shattering changes. Due to the internal war between the dark world and the empty divine realm, Buddhist cultivators began the sweep to cut down the power of these two worlds, so the war now turned into a chaotic 3-way battle. However, in the main battlefield of Buddhism, the Western world of Buddhism still held the absolute advantage, causing the cultivators of the other two worlds to suffer steady defeats and be forced into retreat. There was no doubt that if things continued this way, the dark world and the empty divine realm would eventually be beaten off of the battlefield entirely. Because of this, the evil emperor himself went to the dark divine mountain. The evil emperor came to the dark court to see the dark sovereign. "Why betray me?" the evil emperor asked the dark sovereign unceremoniously. "Evil emperor, do you know the truth about the human ancestor?" asked the dark sovereign. "That's not important." The evil emperor brushed the question aside nonchalantly. "No, it is essential." The dark sovereign looked at the evil emperor as she took off her mask, revealing an indifferent face. The evil emperor did not seem surprised, as his expression remained as it was before. "Do you know how I became the Lord of Darkness?" The dark sovereign looked at the evil emperor and continued, "Once, I was just like so many others, simple-minded and ordinary. Until one person appeared and everything changed. He taught me cultivation and led me on the path of darkness. He let me experience the cruelest and darkest side of this world, so step by step, I came to be the master of the dark world today. Because of this, you think the whole world is dark, and you wanted nothing but destruction," said the evil emperor. "Yes," the dark sovereign nodded. "In this turbid dark world, the dawn will only appear after destruction." "Understandable," The evil emperor nodded. The dragon slayer will eventually become the evil dragon. Perhaps the teacher who taught you was the same. He has also experienced darkness, tried to change the world, and led you to darkness. Very possibly, he is the human ancestor, the Dark Sovereign said to the evil emperor. The evil emperor was silent for a moment when he heard those words but then said, "Everything in the world will eventually settle and cannot be changed." Now, he also seems to have realized your wish, which is to bring darkness to the world. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. No, that is not what I want. What is it that you want, then? The evil emperor asked her. The Dark Sovereign was stunned by this question. What was it that she wanted? Before, her goal was always clear and firm, shroud the earth with darkness. But now, why was she unsure? You want revenge? The evil emperor looked at her. Because you discovered the truth, the belief that you held for so long began to wobble. At this time, even you have no idea what you want to do. If you continue with your previous goal, then, in a way, you have complied with the wishes of your enemy, so you are uncertain now, you are struggling inside. The Dark Sovereign looked at the evil emperor in the eyes, and those evil eyes seemed to see through the truth. She nodded and said, yes. Indeed, she was struggling. Too late, the evil emperor looked at the Dark Sovereign and said, everything has settled, and everything in the world has been predetermined. Since it can't be changed, why not go along with it? Is this still the evil lord of the empty divine realm? The Dark Sovereign looked at the evil emperor and asked. And you? Are you still the Lord of Darkness who wants to destroy the world? The evil emperor responded. The two stared at each other as invisible coercion enveloped the world. All the cultivators of the entire Dark Court could feel that suffocating pressure. In the era when the heavenly path collapsed, the gods fell, as well as so many people in the world. Now, the era seems to be repeating itself, and no one can predict what will happen in the future. However, whether it is the cultivator of the dark world or the empty divine realm, whether it is you or me, we all have the right to live, the evil emperor continued while fixing his attention on the Dark Sovereign. His idea was simple enough. He wanted to live and continue to carry on in this dangerous era. He also hoped to see more of empty divine realms cultivators survive. The balance had been broken, and war was unavoidable, so he must follow the trend of things as they were. Only by surviving could he have the chance to get to a higher level until he was strong enough to pose a threat to the human ancestor. But for now, he had no way of fighting back. As one of the 6 emperors in the world, he was a cultivator standing at the top, but even he had to face reality. When the gods returned and descended, he knew that the era of the 6 emperors was history. So, the Dark Sovereign asked as she looked at the evil emperor. Your order caused the empty divine realm to lose more cultivators, and I won't risk anyone else in today's battle, the evil emperor said. He disappeared from where he was. The Dark Sovereign glanced upward, then stepped out and headed towards the void. After a while, heaven and earth roared in the sky above the Dark Court, and the void seemed to be broken. A terrifying divine power made the hell in the dark world tremble and the sea of the underworld scream. In the human realm, on all the continents, countless cultivators raised their heads. Above the firmament, they saw a gigantic face, and it was the face of the human ancestor. Your Majesty, the human ancestor. Countless cultivators bowed and saluted him, displaying a fervent fanaticism. The face of the human ancestor looked at the people of the world and said, I've been waiting for this day for a very long time, but others stopped me. Now, I'm finally back. Before this, the people of the human realm have already gone to the 7 realms, leading the fight for justice, fighting for the unification of the 7 realms. Now, it is your turn. When his words fell, divine light descended from the firmament, and countless divine lights fell on the people. At this moment, all the cultivators in the human realm were bathed in that divine light, and their eyes became even more frenzied, with an indescribable and utmost reverence. More importantly, they also felt the power, which seemed to augment the capabilities they had already possessed. The divine light that descended strengthened them. This will be a new era, the era of the gods. After the unification of the 7 realms, I will bless the world and let my people have the opportunity to become gods. At this moment, even as mortals, You shall stand shoulder to shoulder with the gods, the human ancestor continued. No one doubted his words at this moment, as they had a deep conviction of their belief. All of them were shouting and cheering. Boom, boom, boom. Heaven and earth trembled, and an even more terrifying divine power descended and fell on the people. Suddenly, they felt that they were the incarnation of gods. Just as the human ancestor told them, as mortals, they were standing shoulder to shoulder with the gods. Many spatial passageways appeared, leading to different places. Go forth. The 7 realms and the original realm will be ours. This is the best of times. The human ancestor's voice resounded throughout the world, full of fervent fanaticism. Countless cultivators in the human realm set off on their missions, traveling through the spatial passageways, and embarked to other worlds. In the Devil world, the Devil Emperor stood on the top of the Devil Imperial Palace, and his eyes seemed to have penetrated the void, seeing everything that was happening in the human realm. What he saw was so powerful and shocking that even the heart of the Devil Emperor trembled. This is madness, the Devil Emperor spat. The human ancestor had gained direct control of the people in the world. He was using these people to reshape the world order, let them rule the world so that the whole world would operate only by his will. In the land of the divine prefecture, in Donghuang Imperial Palace, Donghuang the Great also saw what was happening in the human realm, and he was equally shocked. He, too, exclaimed, "The human ancestor has gone mad." In the world of Buddhism, in the endless nothingness, a sound of Buddha was heard. It was the voice of the Buddha. The human ancestor was no longer just trying to replace the heavenly path. Futian hovered in the void of the heavenly realm while watching the projections of the live happenings from all realms that appeared around him. The cultivators of the human realm unleashed their worldwide conquest and began to slaughter the people from other realms indiscriminately. Mountains of corpses could be seen everywhere. It was a living hell. The scariest part of it all would be the cultivators of the human realm who looked like they were possessed. None of them were in their right minds. It was as if they were born to kill. Moreover, their strength was greatly enhanced, making them an unstoppable bunch of mindless killing machines. Amitabha, the Buddha of Destiny, who stood beside Futian, started reciting Buddhist sutra. He put his hands together after witnessing the violent and gory scenes. "Are you able to peer into the fate of our future?" Futian asked the Buddha of Destiny. "Even I could not peep into your future destiny, Your Highness. There is no way to prevent this predestined fate from taking place. Furthermore, the elite cultivators in this world will have to go through great tribulation. Unfortunately, I cannot perceive what fate has in store for us beyond this point due to the limitation of my cultivation." The Buddha of Destiny put his palms together and answered. Although he could not look into Futian's destiny, he could tell that the latter would have to face an arduous ordeal. "Is there no one that can stop the human ancestor?" Futian murmured. The human ancestor had been controlling the cultivators of the human realm to conquer the whole world. But the former still could not figure out what was the ultimate goal of the latter. The Buddha of Destiny remained taciturn. The human ancestor was the most mysterious and powerful existence since the ancient days. Even though they could alter the flow of time, they still could not catch up to the tier of his cultivation and make up for the difference between their cultivation duration. Futian enveloped the entire domain of the heavenly realm with his divine consciousness. Following that, he noticed many combatants in danger, and the 2 legions he had personally trained had lost many of their forces. Even Xia Qingyuan, Do Zhao, and the rest were in dire situations. Although they were powerful cultivators, they began to show signs of fatigue after continuously fighting for days. There were constant reinforcements from the human realm, and none of them acted like themselves. This was never a fair battle from the start. The human ancestor had manipulated the war by controlling the minds of the cultivators of the human realm. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. After watching the devastative scenes from the projections, Futian knew that he could not allow things to go on like this. If he were to be led by the human ancestor's pace, it would spell doom for the living beings in the world. It was something that they could never afford to see. Bang! Futian manifested a terrifying god's might that covered the entire atmosphere of the heavenly realm with a thought. At once, Everyone lifted their heads to look at the sky. The cultivators of the human realm furrowed their brows while the combatants of the heavenly realm, who looked exhausted and demoralized, felt a huge relief because their ruler, the heavenly emperor, began to interfere with the war. If the war continued any longer, all of them would be annihilated. Attention, you who have invaded the heaven realm. The human ancestor refined the human realm and controlled you to occupy the heavenly realm and massacre its people. But I hereby announce that there shall be no killing and battling in the heavenly realm from this moment onward. Everyone must obey the order for a ceasefire. Offenders will be subject to immediate execution. Futian's voice resounded through the whole heavenly realm. Naturally, the cultivators of the human realm would never listen to his words, as they would only obey the will of the human ancestor to fight for the cause of their justice and unite the seven realms. From their point of view, Futian had said that because he was afraid of losing. Now that he was on the losing end of the battle, the only way to turn the tide would be his intervention. Kill them. Some cultivators of the human realm in the heavenly imperial city paid no heed to Futian's warning and continued their killing spree. They could not think straight since they were controlled by their emotions. They were trapped in their obstinacy, while some even lost themselves to the human ancestor's mind control. Boom! A tribulation of destruction rained from the sky while an overpowering God's might permeated the air. All those who came into contact with it were completely erased. In that instant, countless lights of catastrophe shot down from the sky and killed numerous cultivators of the human realm. Everyone, retreat from the battlefield at once. Futian ordered. He was afraid that the cultivators of the human realm might take revenge on him since he had broken the unspoken rule of the cultivation world. Hence, he commanded the combatants of the heavenly realm to pull back. Rumble. An ominous sound could be heard reverberating in the air. The space passage that connected from the human realm enlarged even more. The border between the two realms seemed to have vanished. There would no longer be a distinction between the heaven realm and the human realm. A destructive divine thunder, also called the Chaos True Thunder, was fired from the human realm to the heavenly realm at a scale that could exterminate every cultivator in that realm. At the same time, multiple silhouettes of the gods showed up at the connecting point between the two realms, exuding a spine-chilling aura. Nevertheless, many figures of the great emperors appeared beside Futian. It was the rivalry between the newly emerged great emperors of the heavenly realm and the old gods from ancient times. Charred. The people of the human realm gasped in astonishment. Instantaneously, the silhouettes of the gods vanished from sight when they crossed over the heaven realm, appearing again at different locations in the next instant. Since Futian had broken the unspoken rules, there would be no law and restriction anymore. What happened next would be a genocide. Figures of ancient gods headed toward multiple points at high speed, turning into flashes of lightning as they moved. The group of the great emperors beside Futian made a move the moment the bodies of the ancient gods glowed up. Aiming at their targets, the former disappeared into thin air right after they accelerated at the same speed. The ancient god of wind had the fastest speed among all. A storm would be stirred up whenever he moved, destroying everything in his path. As a result, every building that he passed by was utterly demolished, killing all the cultivators who were taking shelter inside in the process. After accelerating his speed to the limits, he traversed the city in a flash, forming a crevasse in the middle of it. Following that, a bolt of lightning was closing in on him from behind at a breakneck speed. It looked like a beam of light that traveled across the space and aimed directly at him. The god of wind knitted his brows together when he noticed someone was hot on his heels. With a thought, he created devastating wind blades with his divine power and turned them into a tornado that tore open the void. Immediately, the calamitous cyclone rushed toward that light, turning everything in its path into clouds of dust. That light figure headed into the twister since they could not evade it while moving at such speed. Everything happened within a short moment that was faster than the speed of lightning. Whiz! That light figure passed through the cyclone and came out from the other side, flying toward the god of wind. At the sight of it, the expression of the latter turned glum and transformed himself into an intangible wind current, further increasing his moving speed. Just then, a glaring light that covered a large extent of the boundless space radiated the atmosphere before it. The light pierced through everything it touched. A groan could be heard after a while, and the light immediately launched itself in the direction of the sound. In the direction where the divine light beamed, someone let out a shriek of agony. Immediately after, the god of wind showed himself. However, the silhouette of his gallant form was pierced through by countless rays of light, filling his body with innumerable holes of light. The glaring light gleamed across a vast distance, brimming the void with its brightness. Next, his body was crumbled into uncountable pieces and gradually receded from view. While a disembodied phantom attempted to flee from the scene, the light figure shot a light beam at the former to finish it off, giving no chance to any of its remnants to survive. After a while, the silhouette of Chen Yi appeared in that place. Turning his eyes in another direction, he dashed forward to another destination. Long ago, he had received the inheritance of the Bright Temple, and his perseverance in cultivation finally made him a genuine god of light. While Chen Yi was going around exterminating the enemies, the great emperors beside Yi Futian sealed up the heavenly imperial city. Standing in different locations, they unleashed the divine domain of the Great Path to prevent the gods of the human realm from killing indiscriminately. In another place, Yi Wuchen, Yaya, and Swordmaster of Lihan moved together in a group to set up a sword matrix. At that time, one of the gods entered the sword matrix and threw a domineering punch that broke the void, smashing the sword will into pieces. Fang Kun held a golden divine spear in his hand in another scene. It was emanating an overwhelming divine power of the source of the Great Path. The divine artifact held in the hands of the core members of the great emperors were treasures born in the heavenly path world of Yi Futian. In the opposite direction, a god with a burly figure walked toward them with a black overlord spear that was brimming with divine power in his hand. The void would tremble with every step he took. Bang! After he launched an attack, the overlord spear tore the fabric of spacetime and pierced through the atmosphere, firing at Fang Kun. In response, the latter intensified his intent of battle and poured his divine power into the golden divine spear. Thrusting his weapon forward, it turned into a bolt of magnificent golden lightning that cracked the air in the atmosphere, aiming at the opponent. At the collision of the two spears, the entire scenery turned into what seemed like an apocalypse, destroying everything in the atmosphere nearby. Fang Kun was sent flying backward by the impact. Right then, he turned around and headed into the sky, getting further away from the battlefield. After all, this place could not handle having so many great emperors clashing with each other at the same time. Wasting no time, his opponent tailed him and headed to the sky. The father and son duo, Blind Tai and Tai Tu, stood together in another location. They both unleashed their intimidating divine powers while holding hammers of Tiantian that were packed with frightening energies in their hands to watch over that place. After noticing an approaching god, they swung their divine hammers and battled their enemy. A war between the gods broke out in different locations simultaneously. The size of their war zone was extremely vast. In the blink of an eye, they expanded it from the scale of the heavenly imperial city to the entire continent. Even though it was impossible for the great emperors of the heavenly realm to lock their enemies within a small space, stalling or luring the latter from the battlefield so that their fights would not affect the common people was manageable. Fortunately, their opponents did not deliberately attack the weaker cultivators. Please keep reading 0NMYB0XN0VEL. C0M. After all, most of them were ancient Tiantian. So, they were somewhat reluctant to do so. The War of the Gods erupted in multiple locations at the same time. Rumble. A violent resonant sound caught the attention of many cultivators. After lowering their heads, they noticed that the heavenly imperial city was moving. They were taken aback by the sight of it. No, it's not just the heavenly imperial city, but the whole continent. A person was stunned after realizing the fact. Those who witnessed the bizarre sighting remained in the same spot as they watched the heavenly imperial city getting further away from them. The cultivators who remained in the city didn't dare to fly. So, they just let themselves be dragged away alongside the entire city. Shortly after, they noticed that the war zone was gradually moving further from them. It looked like someone was pulling the whole continent. Eventually, The heavenly imperial city became small in the eyes of the other cultivators. The whole continent was moved away to a far-off distance from the battlefield. Soon after, they caught sight of a massive phantasm of a divine dragon that occupied a huge part of the sky, pulling the entire continent away until it became minuscule. After that, the silhouette of the divine dragon moved toward the war zone in the sky steadily. A while later, they spotted a stunning woman at the scene, and she was none other than Donghuang Diyuan. She was the one who summoned the ancestral dragon to pull the continent away from the war zone. With that, there were only the gods left on the battleground. In short, it had become the battlefield of the gods. Whoosh! A silhouette took a step forward and turned into a flash of lightning while staring down at Donghuang Diyuan with a sharp look. After waving his hand, a sky river of swords manifested in the firmament and split open the atmosphere, slashing at Donghuang Diyuan at lightning speed. If this slash were to hit Donghuang Diyuan, she might not get away unscathed, although she had reached the Great Emperor plan for years already. After all, the one who launched the attack was Eternal Swordlord, a great emperor from ancient times. Right before the slashes of the swords were about to reach Donghuang Diyuan, a figure suddenly showed up in front of her and stretched his hand to touch the eternal swords with his finger. Immediately, the entire swords were shattered. It slowly dissipated and reduced to nothingness. "Father," Donghuang Diyuan murmured. The person who appeared before her in the nick of time was Donghuang the Great. Turning to look at the Eternal Swordlord, he criticized, "You were one of those who had stood at the pinnacle of cultivation since ancient times. I couldn't believe someone of your status would do something as disgraceful as trying to kill a junior. Everyone starts their cultivation journey at different timing. There is no such thing as seniority on the battlefield." After the Eternal Swordlord finished speaking, the whole atmosphere turned into the Eternal Sword domain, where countless swords were fired at Donghuang the Great. "Get out of here first," Donghuang the Great whispered to Donghuang Diyuan. Wasting no time, she fled from the battleground with the divine power of revelation shielding her so that the sword domain could not harm her. At that time, Donghuang the Great's divine power of revelation had grown even more powerful. Within the revelation divine domain, it would not allow any other divine powers to exist. Hence, most of the swords were utterly disintegrated. After the revelation would be the void. Needless to say, Donghuang the Great had once again improved his cultivation to the next level. Clang! Numerous swords hovered around the atmosphere with the control of Donghuang the Great's thought. The moment the heaven-punishing sword will surged its energy, all of the swords were launched at the Eternal Swordlord, shattering everything in their paths and pulverizing all things to nothingness. It was as if no other power could stand against his heaven-punishing sword. "You've improved a lot," the Eternal Swordlord commented after sensing the sword will. Compared to the last time they had clashed with each other, Donghuang the Great's divine power had enhanced even further. That was indeed a phenomenal speed of improvement. "I respect you as one of the great emperors whose name was known by many during ancient times. If you were to leave this battlefield at once, I would not lay a hand on you," Donghuang the Great notified with a tone brimming with absolute confidence, even though he was talking to an ancient super-great emperor. It was only natural since he was one of the strongest beings in the world at that time. "Although the future generations might never know the golden age of the ancient emperors, I can finally see it again today," the Eternal Swordlord remarked solemnly as his sword will gradually intensified. "Quit presuming on your seniority," Donghuang the Great rebuked savagely. This was a fight between the super-great emperor of ancient times and the apex great emperor of the current age. Rumble. A divine power of destruction rained down from the sky, causing many to raise their heads and check out the situation above them, only to find an older man hovering there. That man was exploding a powerful aura as if he was a god who had existed since ancient times, the primogenitor of all sentient beings whose very presence would cause everyone to kneel and worship him. This aged man was also a super-great emperor who was world-renowned during ancient times. He was named as one of the progenitors of the great emperors since he had been cultivating for ages. When his name had already been uttered by everyone, the human ancestor might not even exist yet. He was the primary emperor, who had fought countless conquests in his life. The man hardly ever lost during the Age of the Gods and even the Battle of the Gods. Unfortunately, a legend like him had lost his life during the collapse of the Great Path. Now that he had been resurrected in this era, he had to face a whole bunch of opponents who were the junior gods. These people were the great emperors of the younger generation, challenging the deific prerogative of the ancient ones. A loud sound could be heard from the sky. The sound came from a massive maroon ancient bell that revolved ceaselessly. It gradually turned into bolts of maroon lightning that occupied the entire firmament, permeating the boundless void as they were rained down. Bell sounds were produced from each flash of the maroon lightning that could destroy everyone's spiritual soul. At that, a light of Buddha glared brilliantly. A silhouette with a magnificent golden frame suddenly appeared beneath the primary emperor. That figure was gleaming golden divine light, the light of Buddha. The light covered the whole atmosphere with its brightness. There was a gigantic halo blocking the sky. Runes of Buddhism could be seen above the halo. Each of the runes was brimmed with the great power of Buddhism. Within the runes, an incorporeal phantasm of Buddha was awakened as the sound of Buddha resounded in the atmosphere, clashing with the bolts of maroon lightning. Bam! Bang! Boom! All the apocalyptic attacks were completely nullified. Lifting his head to look at the sky, Futian could see the Buddha leading his legion of Buddhist cultivators as reinforcements. "What are you waiting for?" Futian asked in a deep voice. There were several great emperors who stood behind him. Their blood ran cold upon hearing his question. Those people were Futian the Great and his men. Truthfully, they did not see eye to eye with Futian since they were once enemies. However, they had no choice but to submit to his authority at that moment. Following that, they finally headed toward the battlefield of the gods. After glancing around the battleground, Futian the Great caught sight of a figure of a child. Although that child seemed to be not more than 10 years old, the aura that he exuded was rather formidable. Nevertheless, picking a kid as an opponent would be better on the battlefield full of gods. Immediately after he moved forward, he unleashed an emperor's might toward the child who walked out from the human ancestor's side. Activating the divine power of Futian, he launched a colossal great palm that was covering a big part of the sky at the kid, intending to take out the latter. However, that child raised his head to gaze at Futian the Great with an indifferent and derisive look. The latter furrowed his brows at the sight of the kid's disdainful demeanor. Right then, he instinctively sensed a dangerous aura. Within a split second, that child made a move and turned into a bolt of lightning. Then, he threw a punch with his tiny fist that seemed feeble at first but penetrated the Futian great palm with little effort and accelerated toward his opponent at an incredible speed. Please keep reading on MYB0XN0VL.com. Colors drained from the face of Futian the Great. To think that the Futian great palm that was generated with his divine power was effortlessly destroyed. Just how powerful was the force from that punch? With that, Futian the Great hastily withdrew from the scene. Nevertheless, that child turned himself into a flash of lightning and moved at full tilt. It was so fast that the former could not get away from the latter. In the next moment, that child raised his fist and hurled a punch at his enemy. A tremendous amount of power was imbued in such a simple punch from his small fist. The shock wave from the punch even caused the atmosphere to tremble. The divine silhouette of Futian manifested behind the figure of Futian the Great. Stretching his hands forward, he tried to fend off the attack. In the collision with the tiny fist of his opponent, the child's punch easily crushed his offense and struck his body, including the divine silhouette of Futian. Nothing could halt it in its tracks. Eventually, the body of Futian the Great was broken into pieces. His face blanched as terror flashed across his eyes. His technique was rendered ineffective by a single punch again. The spiritual soul of Futian the Great was disintegrated as he stared at the atmosphere in despair. Eventually, his figure and great path were reduced to nothingness. This fight had attracted the attention of many surrounding cultivators. After all, the one who had gone for the kill was a child with terrifying divine power. After turning his gaze in this direction, Futian caught sight of that child. Needless to say, this individual was no ordinary kid. To wield a divine power of this caliber, would this person be another exterior incarnation of the human ancestor? Whoosh! Jiyu Dongliu turned his body into a flash of light and appeared above that child. A divine demon diagram manifested following that, causing the mood of the atmosphere to change drastically. Nonetheless, that child lifted his head and shot Jiyu Dongliu a mocking and disparaging look. Moreover, the former even shot 2 rays of the divine light of annihilation from his eyes that traversed the void, firing at the latter. Immediately, an ominous sound filled the air as the scenery behind Jiyu Dongliu began to transform into a massive catalogue that appeared to hold a world within it. A blood-curdling aura of the divine power permeated from the catalogue filled with immortals, monsters, demons, and gods. When the divine light of annihilation was fast approaching, a spectacular sword chi burst out of the catalogue, colliding with the former and cancelling out each other in the void. Futian did not worry much about his third senior brother, Jiyu Dongliu, after watching the latter's fight because he had been meditating on the path-slaying cultivation. Hence, the man had become an extremely powerful cultivator. He should be able to handle an exterior incarnation that the human ancestor had created alone. There were destructive storms everywhere on the battlefield. The scale of the battle was so intense that the fabric of space was torn into pieces. Hence, it was the reason this war was called the Battle of the Gods. Their clashes in multiple locations had demolished the atmosphere of the heavenly realm, causing dimensional cracks to appear. With that, some of them left that place and headed to a different battleground. Whoosh! Some destructive turbulence swept across the location of Futian. Instantly, he set his eyes in the direction of the human ancestor and noticed that the latter was standing still on his spot as he turned his gaze to the former. He activated his divine power and circulated it within his body right after stepping forward. As expected, he had to be the one taking on the human ancestor personally, after all. Before he could land his first strike, a bolt of black lightning flashed across the void and came into sight. Noticing that, Futian came to a halt and turned to peer at the silhouette. To his surprise, that person was the Dark Sovereign. However, this time, the Dark Sovereign had unmasked herself, no longer keeping her identity a secret. The moment Futian paid attention to her, he was stunned by the revelation of her real face. Please keep reading on myb0xn0vl.com. Although the Buddha of Destiny did not mention this to Futian, the latter had felt relieved by the fact. In retrospect, it would make sense why she could take control of a continent in the Dark World, which would eventually be called the Island of Miracles. After all, she was the exterior incarnation of the Dark Sovereign. In that case, there must still be some light left inside the heart of the Dark Sovereign so that an island of light without any dispute could exist in the Dark World, a place filled with open-hearted and genuine people. Perhaps, that was the ideal world the Dark Sovereign had ever wanted. Unfortunately, such a utopia could only stay as a fairy tale. Futian could tell that the Dark Sovereign was utterly disappointed at this world. Therefore, she had built the kingdom of darkness in the Dark World to destroy this world, plunging it into darkness so that light could be born in the absolutely wicked and corrupted world. She was a bigot. But even so, it couldn't change the fact that she had goodness in her heart. In contrast, the human ancestor might be deemed the progenitor of humankind and the embodiment of righteousness. But under the mask of his pretense, he was a man of absolute darkness who had shed innocent blood with his hands. He was the person who had started the War of the Seven Realms, one who had regarded the lives of the people as disposables. He, too, had wished to build his ideal world. A world that he had absolute control and sovereignty, a world of the gods where he was their creator. Did all those who had made it to the pinnacle of cultivation have the same extreme conviction? He noticed that the Dark Sovereign had been glaring at the human ancestor with an aloof look ever since her arrival. She was emanating a deadly and destructive aura constantly. This must probably be the reason behind the insurgence of the army of the Dark World previously. Was there any grudge or hatred between the Dark Sovereign and the human ancestor? After the Dark Sovereign, yet another beam of divine light descended. The evil emperor had arrived too. He had fought fiercely against the Dark Sovereign, but neither could defeat the other. However, the Dark Sovereign was not looking at the evil emperor right now. Instead, she kept staring at the human ancestor. "It's you, right?" she asked. The human ancestor was also looking at the dark sovereign. Then he said, "Kaya, why do you not greet your master?" Boom. Even though the dark sovereign already guessed it, her heart still twitched fiercely after receiving the answer. Her destructive aura swept through uncontrollably. Her eyes were filled with endless hatred as she glared at the other. The gods in battles surrounding them were also quite shocked inside. The human ancestor was the dark sovereign's master? Why? Why did I have to do all that? As the will of the 6 emperors, the dark sovereign's mindset had always been very determined, but she still lost control of her emotions now, as she demanded at the human ancestor loudly. The sealed memories, the memories she had buried, now flooded her mind, taking over her entire brain. It was like a nightmare. It seemed now that the dreams from before were foreshadowing, or perhaps she had felt that this day would come. Because you have a pure heart, so I chose you. This is your luck to go from a mundane human and transform into a god, the human ancestor said calmly. The dark sovereign seemed to be his experiment or project to create a god. It is not only you. He is my choice as well. Otherwise, do you think you really would have the chance to prove your path? The human ancestor said, looking at the evil emperor. Even Futian felt shaken inside. Half of the 6 emperors in the world had been created by him. The human ancestor had been creating gods since many years ago. He had also been controlling the state of the world these countless years. Everything was under his control. Please keep reading on myb0xn0vl.com. Only the heaven realm was not under his control. The heaven realm first had the heavenly emperor and then the sovereign princess. They had all been very troublesome for him. In the current generation, it had passed on to Futian. The world of Buddhism and devil world had nothing to do with the human ancestor. Kaya, return to master's side, the human ancestor said. I could create you, so I can also destroy you. There is no need to be obsessed with past hatred and conflicts. You are a god now, a god standing at the peak of the world. You will help me manage the world from now on, becoming the leader of the gods. We will create a world of gods together. Boom. As soon as the human ancestor finished speaking, a horrifying world-ending tribulation appeared in the dome of the sky. Pitch-black divine tribulations dropped down. The entire world transformed into a dark and dead world. Seeing this scene, the human ancestor's brows furrowed, but he recovered after a moment and said to the dark sovereign, "Why do this to yourself?" He did not attack, but the evil emperor already had. Gold spatial divine light flashed and enveloped the vast space. It clashed against the other party's divine power. It was like a world-destroying battle had erupted in the place they were located in right now. But everyone on this battlefield seemed to be used to it already and was not shocked. There were divine battles everywhere with different great emperor cultivators in different spaces. Every grand battle was earth-shattering, destroying and upending the world. Futian glanced at this messy battlefield. Then his gaze moved towards the human ancestor. He had paused earlier, but now he started walking out again. The 9 dragons' divine light shimmered around his body and illuminated the sky, creating a natural phenomenon. A long spear appeared in Futian's hand, blazing with destructive divine light. The human ancestor looked up and gazed at Futian. His eyes grew a bit graver too. Then the clouds shone in the sky above the human realm, and countless beams of divine light fell, descending upon the human ancestor's body. He bathed under these beams of divine light. Then the human ancestor's body enlarged wildly. He crossed the vast space, covering the portion of the sky. His body was now big enough to cross stars as if he could destroy a continent with a finger. The human ancestor now was like a god of creation. He scrutinized the people and also examined the insignificant Futian. Before him, Futian was just like an ant. The human ancestor's eyes scanned Futian. Divine light shot out of his eyes and transformed into chaotic divine thunder. Countless divine swords appeared from this mass of chaos true thunder that shot towards Futian's body. It was like he could kill and destroy someone with just one glance. He was no longer borrowing power from the heavenly path. Instead, he was an existence comparable to the heavenly path. The thunder that his eyes summoned was the chaos true thunder. His force was the most original force in the world. It seemed that the space Yi Futian was in was about to be flooded. The Chaos True Thunder's attack was coming, and he was too minuscule in comparison. It was like an average human standing in the heavens, facing the thunder and lightning from the heavens. He could be drowned and buried in an instant. If it were any other great emperor cultivator, they would not be able to fend off such a terrifying attack at all. Yi Futian also understood why the other gods listened to the human ancestor's orders. In reality, the human ancestor already possessed supreme divine power after returning. Even great emperors were not enough to be treated with respect by him, let alone an average person. Please keep reading on MYB0xN0VL.com. Immense chaos True Thunder flooded the world, sweeping toward Yi Futian's body like a raging current. However, Yi Futian's body was unmoving. He bathed in the light of the chaos True Thunder. He was actually ignoring the human ancestor's super-strong attack. Yi Futian's eyes were frightening, dazzling with divine light. He stared at the humongous and giant divine figure across from him. He was minuscule, but he had created his own micro-heavenly path. He had a path that was independent from the world. Nowadays, his great path was already complete. It would not be so easy to bring him down. The human ancestor was not surprised either. In a certain way, Yi Futian was the one who was closest to him. He had created the micro-heavenly path with his mortal body, establishing his world and creating an independent law of time and space. Yi Futian was already like a creator, a god of creation now. They were the only two who had made such accomplishments in this world. Boom! The human ancestor raised a fist and sent a blow towards Yi Futian. When the blow landed, the space of the heaven realm started collapsing like crazy. All the law of the great path turned to dust under his punch. This punch did not seem to have the light of divine power, but it also seemed to contain the world's strongest force. The human ancestor had already returned to the basics. Every single move or action came from the source of the path. The divine light that shot out of his eyes was the power of chaos, while the intent of his punch could destroy a world. The windstorm swept over, shattering the void. The space around Yi Futian's body started collapsing and crumbling crazily. His robes fluttered, and his white hair flew. Moving his feet slightly, Yi Futian stabbed his long spear forward. The moment he stabbed it out, the spear in his hands enlarged rapidly. It blazed with supreme divine light and penetrated the space with one blow, crashing against the incoming punch from the human ancestor. The instant that the blows crashed, a deep and low sound emitted from the vast world. Everyone felt this horrifying quake. Yi Futian's body was forced into a retreat. That frightening fist intent also broke apart. The surrounding space was collapsing and cracking crazily while the frightening spatial currents ravaged wildly. But neither Yi Futian nor the human ancestor cared at all. With their current cultivation states, they could pass freely within the space windstorm. Divine power of the world? Yi Futian asked, looking at the human ancestor. Divine power is just the law and order. At present, I represent the law of the heavenly path, so why do I care about divine power? The human ancestor said. His voice reverberated through the vast and boundless world, making many cultivators feel their eardrums quivering. He was the heaven, he represented the heavenly path. His every casual move was the law. He was the law's incarnate itself. He agreed with what he heard from the other. After he had constructed the heavenly path world, his two eyes had transformed into the moon and sun, and he could form thunder and lightning by raising his hands. They were both the incarnates of the laws. Divine power was no longer important. The human ancestor's one punch was like the force of a world slamming down. One could imagine how aggressively powerful he was. Holy light enveloped Yi Futian's body. He bathed under the halo, and natural phenomena occurred. The moon, sun, and stars revolved around him. Countless beams of light flowed around him like time and space were changing. The spear in his hand did not seem realistic, but it blazed with an incredible aura. With one thought, Yi Futian's body vanished. Bang! His body carried the long spear and stabbed into the human ancestor's giant body with a loud bang. The human ancestor's magnificent body was penetrated, and Yi Futian killed his way in. But then he discovered that he'd broken into a wintry world that could even solidify space. The human ancestor's physical body was its own world. Forcing in here did not seem meaningful. Please keep reading on MYB0XN0VEL. Boom. Yi Futian's body passed through from the other side, and he saw the human ancestor's broken body heal instantly. It was just like before. It seemed as if it had not been injured at all. Yi Futian's attack appeared to be futile and completely meaningless. I have transformed into the heavenly path and have an immortal body. Who can kill me? The human ancestor's voice was extremely domineering. He was the heaven, he was the path. He had finally become an undying god from a mere mortal and was now the supreme being. Now, he would not die. No one in the world could kill him. No one is infallible, Yi Futian said in reply. Gods were people too. Since they were people, then there were no absolutely immortal beings. His body vanished from the spot once again. The frightening long spear attacked somewhere on the human ancestor's huge frame. A hole appeared on the human ancestor's body, but divine spatial light shot out of that hole to imprison him there. However, Yi Futian's body vanished instantly and reappeared somewhere else. He transformed into beams of light and streaks of shadows, sending blows onto the human ancestor's body again and again. The human ancestor's star-like body continuously shattered and collapsed. There were cracks everywhere, but just as he had said, he had an immortal body. This was not even his true form. It was just a clone. The human realm's divine light continued to wash over his body. His broken body sent down countless beams of destructive tribulation light shrouded over the vast void. It included chaos, true thunder, tribulations of destruction, and shredding swords. Yi Futian saw this scene while his body hovered in the air. His eyes swept towards the vast space. In an instant, everything in his vision was enveloped in a domain. The attacks coming at him murderously from all directions suddenly slowed down and then stopped. The human ancestor looked at Yi Futian. When he met Yi Futian's eyes, his gaze froze too, seeming to stop there. One could not call Yi Futian's eyes anymore. They represented time and space. Just as the human ancestor had said, they created a world and transformed it into the heavenly path. They had surpassed the category of physical bodies. Every part of their body was a path. Yi Futian looked at the still human ancestor. His two eyes transformed into paths and were extremely frightening. He looked towards the chaos, true thunder, tribulations of destruction, and shredding swords, and everything was destroyed. They were turned into nothingness and obliterated directly. All this time, Yi Futian had been pursuing the extremes of cultivation. What was extreme? How could you reach the extremes? He had not figured it out yet, but over these past years, he had at least taken a few more steps down that road. After his heavenly path world was completed, he could establish a divine domain of time and space. In that divine domain, he could change the flow of time. At the extreme, he could reduce the flow of time by 81 times. The difference of 81 times was close to stopping. But merely this was not enough. His father, Donghuang the Great, cultivated the revelation divine power. The extremity of revelation was nothingness. He believed that nothingness was one of the final points of cultivation. The extremity of Buddhist was emptiness, for all to be empty. Were nothingness and emptiness similar? Building from that, Yi Futian figured out the ultimate path of destruction, an evolution of the path of time and space. Please keep reading on MYB0XN0VL, time and space collapse. He gazed into the distance, and all objects in this space collapsed and shattered, getting destroyed and turning into nothingness. The chaos, true thunder, and tribulations of destruction were also extinguished like this. Yi Futian looked towards the majestic frame of the human ancestor. That frightening divine body was also collapsing and shattering. All physical objects were going to be destroyed and turned into nothingness. The long spear in Yi Futian's hands blazed with supreme divine power. His body flashed, and he stabbed the spear forward, hitting the human ancestor's majestic and giant body. In an instant, the entire time and space constricted rapidly and collapsed, turning into a horrifying black hole. Everything was going to be destroyed and buried. The human ancestor's boundlessly huge body was quickly shrinking too. It collapsed in an extremely short instant, shattering and turning into nothingness. It was swallowed by the black hole windstorm. This was also an evolution of the spear technique entombed. It was practically an undefeatable spear attack. Soon, the majestic frame that had stood in the vast void was destroyed and disappeared. It seemed to have been buried by this spear, but Yi Futian did not relax. His eyes continued staring forward. This battle was a battle that determined the fates of every soul. He had always wanted to wait until he comprehended the ultimate truth of cultivation. He would never take the initiative to attack if not for the crisis of survival of the Seven Realms. Many people in the surrounding battlefields looked toward where the human ancestor had been. The human ancestor's magnificent body had been killed. Yi Futian had killed it. The hearts of many great emperors jumped in extreme shock. Nowadays, the 6 emperors were probably no longer Yi Futian's match. As for those average great emperors, they would be even less of a match for Yi Futian's spear. Was the human ancestor dead? Some great emperor battles even stopped. They stared at Yi Futian's battlefield. If the human ancestor had been killed, then it meant that this battle was over. But could the human ancestor die so easily? That had only been the human ancestor's clone. A horrifying aura circulated through the sky over the human realm, and limitless divine light shone down. An incredible and peerless divine might radiated out, causing the hearts of many strong figures to pulse. The human ancestor was all right, as expected. Yi Futian had only killed the human ancestor's clone, his spokesperson in the human realm. The true human ancestor had not yet appeared. Not bad. A voice traveled from the human realm. Divine light kept flowing in the dome of the sky as if an illusory figure was forming. It gave off a misty and intangible feeling. The law of time and space. And you've touched onto the level of substance. As expected of the god of creation, the voice continued to say, Yi Futian, I want to create a world of gods. You can manage the gods in my place. It would be an ideal land in the future, where all the law in the world is under control. Everything would operate according to my thoughts. The world would be so much more perfect than the current world. What you want is a puppet world. Only your thoughts exist in that world. And what is the significance of that kind of world? Yi Futian responded, looking toward the human realm. His voice rang through the void. What is the significance of this current world? And what was the significance of the ancient heavenly path world? The voice continued streaming from that heavenly path. Status, bloodshed. There will never be peace. It will cycle endlessly. How many people died in the war of the gods back then? How many would have had any shred of pity for the world? The people need an ideal world, a perfect world of gods. Yi Futian did not reply. Whether it was people or the world, there were always flaws. Perfection itself was a trap. Absolute perfection did not exist in the world. Was the world that the human ancestor planned to create genuinely perfect? It was only he who wanted it. He wanted everything to operate under his ideas. And now, the human realm was under his control, but the cultivators of the human realm had been reduced to murder machines. He stepped forward, walking toward the human realm, and stood under that sky. At present, all of the 7 realms were under the other's influence. If the human ancestor did not die, the conflicts would never be resolved. The tribulations of the 7 realms would continue, and people would continuously die. Another figure appeared on the battlefield of the gods. The figure wore a simple robe, but there was an aggressive aura about him. His gaze swept towards the sky of the human realm and then scanned the entire battlefield. There was a layer of contempt in his eyes. This new figure was the Devil Emperor. You came just in time. Kill him now. I will help you. The voice streamed out of the sky above the human realm. The Devil Emperor looked toward Yi Futian. Yi Futian was also looking at him and called out, Senior. Please keep reading on myb0xn0vl.com. He did not say anything else. This battle was a battle of the gods. The ancient gods and the great emperors of this era had all appeared here. Since the Devil Emperor came, He naturally had made his own decision and choice as well. He wanted to know if the Devil Emperor's choice was like the evil emperor or if he would choose another path. Futian was waiting for an answer. Then monstrous demonic might flared from the Devil Emperor's body. His aura was extremely horrifying. He was like the body of tribulations. Countless beams of tribulation light flowed across his body, containing immense destructive power. He reached a hand out, and a devil sword appeared instantly. Wielding the devil sword, the Devil Emperor cut down in one direction. The sword cut apart the void and hacked down somewhere. There was a battlefield there. On it, U2 was currently fighting against a great emperor. Just at that time, the frightening devil sword arrived in a flash. The expression of the opponent in front of U2 was shocked. He wanted to block it, but his divine power shield was hacked apart. The devil sword came down and killed him directly. A great emperor had been killed by one strike of a sword. U2 turned and looked at the Devil Emperor standing in the sky. There was a rare smile on his face as he said, "Brother, us two brothers have not fought together in how many years?" There was some feeling of closure in his smile right now. Even though he had always believed that he had chosen the correct path and did not regret it, he was still the traitor. This was not just an accusation toward him by the Devil Emperor. He had truly betrayed them. The Devil World was the prison of the ancient heavenly path. It was the absolute opposite of the Heaven Court, Heavenly Emperor, and the later Divine Prefecture. They had always been enemies. All cultivators of the Devil World spent their lives trying to use their own efforts to lead the army of the Devil World out. He had abandoned the Devil World without a doubt and stepped onto another path. Thus, he had always carried heavy guilt on his shoulders. The Devil Emperor looked at U2 and said, "I didn't do this for you." "I know," U2 replied, not minding. The Devil Emperor's gaze swept toward the sky of the human realm and said, "The cultivators of the Devil World will not become slaves." He knew that if the Devil World chose to submit, they would forever be the subordinates of the human realm. If they were not obedient, they might be destroyed. What was the difference between that and the Heavenly Path era? For countless years, they had carried the status of prisoners. They wanted even less to carry the status of slaves after this. Please keep reading on MYB0xN0VL.com+. The human ancestor had threatened him with the lives of everyone in the Devil World, and this had already crossed his bottom line. Thus, he would rather stand on Yi Futian's side. "Dong Huang, Yi Futian," the Devil Emperor announced. "I have already ordered for the Devil World army to ceasefire against the Divine Prefecture. If we are defeated here today, I hope that the world can view the cultivators of the Devil World without discrimination. Being defeated may mean death. If he died, he hoped that the cultivators of the Devil World could live in this world." "Senior, do not worry," Yi Futian stated. "Furthermore, if we are defeated, I might be like you and not be able to see the future. This battle was all or nothing. If they lost, they might all die. They would not be able to see anything. It would definitely be an age of darkness." "All right." The Devil Emperor nodded. The Buddha of Destiny had predicted that he would encounter a tribulation. If today was his tribulation, he hoped that the cultivators of the Devil World would be unscathed and that they would be free of the Devil Abyss's restrictions. Even if there was no Devil World in the future, even if everyone in the future forgot the will of the Devil World, it was no longer important. The Devil Emperor stepped forward, walking toward one direction, and joined the battlefield. After the Devil Emperor joined the battle, all 6 emperors were now present. They all participated in the fight. This battle gathered all the top figures. If one had to name someone missing, then it was only Ji Wudao who was temporarily locked away by the current Heavenly Emperor. In Dong Huang the Great's battlefield, he and the Eternal Swordlord were still in a stalemate. After seeing that the Devil Emperor had come to join the battle, Dong Huang the Great felt gratuitous. The 6 emperors had fought for countless years, checking and balancing each other, but he always knew who his opponent was. He had never viewed the Devil World as his enemy and respected the Devil Emperor deep down. Now, they finally had the chance to fight side by side. 4 of the 6 emperors were on their side. Even the Dark Sovereign was now standing against the human ancestor. Aggressive Sword Chi suddenly appeared, But Donghuang the Great did not avoid it. The revelation divine power seemed to evolve at this moment. The murderous sword intent filling the sky scattered and became formless, turning into nothingness. No sword intent could approach his body. This domain of nothingness was also expanding and shrouding toward the eternal Sword Lord. Donghuang, a voice rang out. Then the eternal Sword Lord's body was already gone. He had transformed into the divine domain of the sword path, becoming one with all the heavens. His huge silhouette appeared in the dome of the sky, formed by countless sword intents. These sword intents seemed to be immortal, eternally existing in the world. Merely his voice contained an extremely sharp aura. Zip, zip. There were sharp, ear-piercing sounds. The vast void was formed by the eternal sword intent. Every beam of sword intent was extremely strong. This micro-world was the world of the sword. Donghuang the Great raised his head and looked at the eternal Sword Lord. He sensed an extremely strong threat. This micro-world contained billions of sword intent. I cultivated the sword path and ruled the world. I did not think I would meet my match in the later world. You won my respect. This sword is the eternal sword. If you can take it, then this battle will be over, the eternal Sword Lord said. His voice was extremely domineering. The revelation divine power from Donghuang the Great shrouded the vast space. The endless sword intent invaded it without resistance, but they could not hurt him at all. Then divine power surged on Donghuang the Great. Divine light enveloped his body, and he looked brilliant. Emperor light wrapped around him, filled with an air of mightiness. He looked up at the eternal Sword Lord and said, I respect you as an ancient senior. It's not too late for you to give up now. Presumptuous, the eternal Sword Lord barked. Then he stated loudly, of the 3,000 great paths, only the sword is eternal. As soon as he spoke, all the divine swords seemed to solidify, becoming able to obliterate every single existence. Everything in that sword domain was about to turn into dust and ashes, dying under the sword. Billions of divine swords in the dome of the sky converged into an eternal sword that could cross over the world. It stabbed down, and it seemed very slow, but it crossed the vast void in every second. The two were fighting at a large distance between each other. Donghuang the Great sensed the sword might. The worlds in its path collapsed, and space shattered. Everything was turning to dust under this sword. In the dome of the sky, the eternal Sword Lord's face was boundlessly huge. Sword light wrapped around him and illuminated the heavens. At that moment, many cultivators on the continents of the heaven realm could all see a highly brilliant arc of sword light in the sky. The revelation divine power was collapsing and shattering. It could not hold up against the sword intent at all. That divine sword killed its way over, shooting toward Donghuang the Great. Right then, Donghuang the Great's body transformed into illusory light, as if he was not genuinely tangible. But the divine light on his body was even more brilliant than earlier. His two hands formed an imprint, and he pointed his finger forward, uttering from his lips, "Become nothing." As soon as he spoke, his body moved forward. His finger transformed into a sword that went upward. The frightening eternal sword intent fell from the sky, but it crumbled in an instant, turning into nothingness. That was not all. Everything under the path of Donghuang the Great's finger was obliterated, turning into nothingness. After that, everything surrounding his body also turned into nothingness. No type of divine power could survive. The world-slaying eternal sword shot down from the dome of the sky, killing toward Donghuang the Great with an extremely aggressive force. It was as if Donghuang the Great's body would be stabbed through instantly and killed right then and there. But Donghuang the Great did not retreat at all. He continued forward, his finger clashing against the extremely domineering eternal sword. It looked like a moth trying to move a tree. There was no intense explosion. There was only annihilation and nothingness. The eternal sword was actually penetrated by Donghuang the Great's finger. Then it broke bit by bit, turning into nothingness. The boundlessly huge sword was dissolved as if it had never existed. This scene made the expression of the eternal Sword Lord, who had become one with the sky and the heavens, change drastically. Donghuang the Great continued upward. His finger pointed before him and landed on the massive face of the eternal swordlord, breaking the sky with a finger. At that moment, the sky was shattering and turning into nothingness. The eternal swordlord's face was twisting. Some sword intent wanted to escape and leave, but under that divine power of the void, no type of chi was able to go. Everything turned into the void. In that instant, everything was shattering. The eternal swordlord's face disappeared. That sword domain also shattered, transforming into nothingness. Donghuang the Great stood atop the void. His body re-solidified, but his aura was a bit weaker. He consumed a pill and then sat cross-legged, closing his eyes to cultivate. On the other battlefields, the Devil Emperor began sweeping in all directions after joining the battle. The 6 emperors were the top figures of the world. Even the ancient great emperors found it difficult to counter them. Only those super great emperors could put up a fight. At this time, the Devil Emperor and U2 already had the blood of a dozen ancient great emperors on their hands. The Devil Emperor's goal turned to the Evil Emperor, who was fighting against the Dark Sovereign. If they killed the Evil Emperor, the result of this battle would be set. Meanwhile, U2 charged towards another battlefield. Of course, the most dangerous one was still the human ancestor, who had transformed into the heavenly path. Please keep reading 0NMYB0XN0VEL. Yi Futian stood under the heavenly path of the human ancestor and saw an extremely frightening force shroud the vast space. Then Yi Futian discovered with shock that countless air currents rushed towards that part of the sky. At that moment, the entire human realm sank into a mass of moans and cries. All of the cultivators in the human realm seemed to be out of control, but that was not all. Even the people from all over who were fighting there were the same. The human ancestor had refined the human realm. Was he swallowing the energy of the entire human realm? Was he going to use all the cultivators of the human realm? What is that? Yi Futian stared at the upper sky. He saw countless illusory shadows. They were like various obsessions or emotions and desires. Many shadows were struggling, but it was to no avail. They all converged atop the sky. Justice. This was the human ancestor's justice, his path. Were all the cultivators of the human realm his puppets? I must stop him. This thought appeared in Yi Futian's mind. He realized that the most dangerous human ancestor was about to come into the world. With one thought, divine light appeared around Yi Futian's body, filling the sky. Strange phenomena and countless divine swords appeared. He pointed at the sky, and the billions of divine swords broke through at once, shooting towards that part of the sky. A patch of sword rain appeared in the sky, shooting towards that part of the heavenly path. The converged force kept getting extinguished, and yet Yi Futian heard a mocking voice come from the heavens. Don't you call yourself the side of justice? Why are you committing bloodshed now? Yi Futian's pupils constricted. Were the illusions that he was extinguishing real cultivators? This is your justice. Yi Futian stared at the illusory face in the sky. After I control the heavenly path and create a world of gods, there will be absolute justice, the human ancestor replied. The heavenly emperor could not stop me back then. Your mother could not stop me either. Today, you will be the same. The entire heavens turned into an illusory face. All of the gods that were fighting looked up towards there as well. Their hearts pounded. Was the true human ancestor coming? In many continents of the human realm, the trees were withering, and the rivers and lakes were drying up. Everything in the world was being destroyed. The people of the human realm all sank into endless despair. They looked up to the heavens. Was that their world savior? Why was he now bringing doomsday to the human realm instead? The human ancestor was refining all the energy of the human realm. The yin and yang, the 5 elements, and everything were melded into the heavenly path. On the battlefield, Yi Futian and the others looked up to the sky. They sensed the might of the doomsday. The energy contained in that heavenly path already surpassed a great emperor. He was refining an entire world. Many people stopped fighting. Even the evil emperor stopped his battle and instead looked up at that sky. Everyone felt coldness deep in their bones. The human ancestor's humanity was already gone, or rather, he was not a human anymore. He already viewed himself as a god of creation. After countless years of cultivation, I have realized the ultimate path. Everything in the world follows the law of conservation. This was the reason why the heavenly path collapsed back then. If the gods want to rise, then the heavenly path must be destroyed, the voice streamed from the heavens. However, they were still defeated in the end. Success was impossible. Nowadays, the world that has been in chaos for countless years will finally return to order. Everything will return to the correct path. The way to return to the correct path is through bloodshed, the evil emperor asked, looking at the heavens. He was shocked by everything that he saw the human ancestor do. All of this was too horrifying. If this continued, he could not imagine what the world would turn into. Since the world follows the law of conservation, then to create an era of gods, there can't be too many humans. There seemed to be a pair of eyes in the sky that looked at the evil emperor. What? Do you want to betray me too? Everything you're doing is incomprehensible, the evil emperor said. He had wanted to follow the strong side, which was the human ancestor. Everything had been decided already, but at this moment, he started feeling belated fear. If the human ancestor achieved his ideal world, what would it be like? I spent countless years and ages to comprehend the ultimate path. It is very typical for you not to be able to comprehend it. I do not need you to understand either, the human ancestor said. I am known as the human ancestor. Thus, I will reshape the world order today. The human ancestor, the ancestor of humankind. After he reshaped the world order, he would be the first ancestor of the new world's humans. There would be generation after generation with no end. Boom. Beams of divine light dropped down, falling onto everyone's bodies. At that moment, all the cultivators felt their consciousnesses and minds become muddled. It was like a horrifying intent was trying to invade them and take over their bodies directly. Even Futian felt this horrifying strength. In his mind, he saw a boundless and domineering face invading with the might of the heavenly path. Boom, boom, boom. Beams of frightening divine power burst forth. Divine power flared crazily from the ancient figures whom the human ancestor had revived and brought back. Their eyes became extremely demonic as if they were no longer themselves. They released divine power crazily as they attacked the fighters. Turns out the ancient emperors being revived was all a sham. They're all puppets controlled by the human ancestor. Everyone understood now after seeing this scene. Futian broke free from the state, and he yelled, "Careful." This voice reverberated in everyone's eardrums like a ringing bell. It helped everyone maintain clarity in their minds, but even so, several great emperors around them still suffered from the sudden attack. At this time, strong divine power enveloped the vast space, covering all the cultivators. It was Hua Jiu's divine power of colorless realm. All the strong figures bathed in the divine power of colorless realm and blocked off the invasion of that intent. Poof! Just then, there was a crisp sound. Futian looked back toward a certain direction, and he saw that in that place, shock appeared in the evil emperor's eyes. There was a golden spear in his body. The horrifying spatial divine power was distorting the space. This is the consequence of betraying, a voice came from the silhouette. Then the space twisted and shattered wildly. The evil emperor's body exploded directly, turning into nothingness in the distorted space windstorm. He was killed directly. Human ancestor. Everyone's hearts pounded. The devil emperor and dark sovereign looked at the figure who had killed the evil emperor. It was an ancient emperor, but right now, he had become the clone of the human ancestor. He was a puppet. The human ancestor could come to the world by using them. This had already been proven. The human ancestor that Futian had killed earlier was exactly like this. However, coming to this world by using the body of a puppet made the human ancestor even more frightening. As one of the 6 emperors, the evil emperor had been one of the most supreme beings, but he had been killed directly. It was also with the spatial power that he himself had been skilled at. The human ancestor had truly touched the source of all. Just as he said, he was a god of creation. Divine power was no longer necessary because he represented the law. Please keep reading 0NMYB0XN0VEL. Yi Futian trained his eyes on that side. Extremely powerful divine power descended instantly, shrouding the other's body. The evil emperor had shown the responsibility as one of the 6 emperors by realizing the end, but he was killed so quickly because of this. That figure stared at Yi Futian with disdain and mockery in his eyes. Boom! Yi Futian's body vanished from the spot. He stabbed his spear out unwaveringly. Time came to a stop. The other was unmoving. The spear penetrated the other's body directly, and he was annihilated instantly, killed instantly. However, Yi Futian did not relax at all. This was only a clone, while the human ancestor could descend at will, appearing anywhere. Those ancient emperors were all his puppets and could all become his incarnates. This even made Yi Futian feel fear. Who could stop the human ancestor, other than him? If the human ancestor's incarnates killed the others, who would be able to stop him? Thinking of this, Yi Futian's divine power instantly shrouded the vast space, covering all the battlefields with his divine thought. He sensed a commotion in one direction, and his expression changed with shock. With a thought, he pushed his divine power to the maximum. Everything seemed to stop, but a frightening figure was still shooting toward Hua Jiyu. Hua Jiyu had released the divine power of colorless realm, attracting the human ancestor's attention, and thus became the target that the human ancestor wanted to kill the most. Boom! In that space, Yi Futian's speed reached his maximum limit, moving like a shooting star. Poof! The attack missed. It stabbed into where Hua Jiyu had been standing, but Hua Jiyu's body had disappeared. She was standing at another point with Yi Futian. Yi Futian's heart pounded, feeling the aftershock. He trained his eyes on the figure in the lower sky. If he had been an instant slower, Hua Jiyu might have died in the hands of the human ancestor. Even now, everyone was still in danger. All of you come back, Yi Futian announced loudly, calling for all the fighters to return to his side. At the same time, his divine power enveloped the vast space, raising his guard against the other. It is meaningless. The voice traveled from the dome of the sky, and a face appeared in the heavenly path. Then limitless divine light shone down. It converged in one place. There, a humanoid figure gradually appeared. This figure did not seem real. It was an incredibly perfect person. Every part of the body was translucent, it was carved from the heavenly path and had no flaws. I gave you all chances, but since you did not treasure it, you will disappear now. Become a part of the world, the human ancestor said. He did not believe in gods and did not believe in any person. He only believed in himself. It was only absolutely real if everything was grasped in his own hands. Even if he created a world of gods, he still wanted to control all the gods. Everything in the world had to operate under his wishes. The perfect figure that had appeared bathed under the divine light of the heavenly path. He lowered his head and gazed at Yi Futian. His eyes were extremely frightening. It was like he could enter Yi Futian's mind with only one glance and rob his control over his body. The other's figure was projected in Yi Futian's mind. He seemed to see the sky and also all the organisms. It was the entire human realm. The human ancestor was no longer a pure human cultivator, he was a different species. Surrender, the human ancestor said. His voice shook the world. Yi Futian showed signs of lowering his head to bow down to the other. This was a supreme intent, the intent of the heavenly path. This is my world. A thought appeared in Yi Futian's mind. He locked the other's intent in his world and then destroyed it. However, at practically the same time, an extremely dangerous aura descended. The human ancestor attacked while holding the sword of law. It contained extremely frightening divine power. Everything in the world was about to be destroyed. Yi Futian looked up at the other. Everything in the surrounding world froze. All the divine power stopped flowing. However, he could not stop the other's actions. The human ancestor's body was still descending. Even the divine power of law of time could not block his sword. His law of sword surpassed that of time and could shatter the time and space here directly. The divine power of time did not have a form, but even so, Futian could still clearly feel that time was collapsing. Futian tightened his grasp on the spear. When one reached the level that he and the human ancestor were at, everything returned to the basics. Those brilliant divine techniques all lost their meaning. It was a clash of the most primitive forces. Boom! His body transformed into the path and advanced. His spear broke through the air. This spear seemed to carry the force of a universe gathered on the spear. It could shatter every physical item in the universe. If it hit a world, it could be destroyed directly. And at that moment, there was only one figure before them. Continue reading on myb0xn0vl.com. The instant that two streaks of light shot out, everything in the surroundings went still. Even the two streaks seemed like simple attacks. Everyone sensed how frightening the one blow was. It was like time was suffering formless restrictions, and they could not move. The human ancestor and Futian were all above their levels. Finally, the two attacks crashed into each other. It felt like a long time had passed. There was no intense explosion. This collision was already above the law of time and had also surpassed sound. Everyone felt the absolute stillness. They could hear their own heartbeats. After that, the entire world in that area collapsed and shattered. It crumbled into nothingness in that instant. Everything no longer existed. The strong figures of the great emperor plane nearby all retreated quickly, releasing their divine power wildly to fend off the corrosion from that destructive force. But despite this, some people were still heavily injured. Futian was in the center of the battlefield. He felt the world inside his body collapsing and shattering. Many buildings in his micro-heavenly path world were collapsing, cracks appeared in the mountains, and the sea was roaring. It was like experiencing a tribulation. His body was forced to an extremely faraway place, and he let out a muffled grunt from his lips. The space around him had already crumbled and turned into nothingness. The perfect body that the human ancestor had formed also shattered, turning illusory. However, as divine light shone down from the heavens, that broken figure reformed and was reborn. It seemed to be eternal and undying. Boom! Right then, a beam of extremely aggressive sword light hacked down, cracking the world. It cut down at the heavenly path. Billions of devil tribulations were released with the sword light, ripping through every existence. It was about to rip apart and destroy that part of the sky. This was done by the Devil Emperor. In ancient times, the heavenly path had managed the world law and had a consciousness. The human ancestor had cultivated in ancient times, and now, he had become the heavenly path. In that case, killing his incarnate was no longer meaningful. They could only kill the human ancestor by shattering the heavens, like in ancient times. The human ancestor turned and looked at the Devil Emperor. Scorn flashed past his eyes. Suddenly, countless beams of tribulation light dropped from the heavenly path, shooting murderously toward the Devil Emperor. At the same time, the huge face stared at the Devil Emperor, invading the Devil Emperor's mind. The Devil Emperor's body was frozen there, but his eyes continued bursting with a really shocking demonic light. His body had turned into a tribulation form, and he uttered devilish sounds that circled up in the sky. Abruptly, light from billions of demonic tribulations swept up the heavens, wanting to cut apart that heavenly path. At that moment, the cultivators in the lower sky saw limitless tribulation light pass through the sky and ravage crazily in the sky. Suicide, the perfect incarnation of the human ancestor, uttered. The next moment, his body vanished. A sword of law stabbed through the Devil Emperor's body directly. The strength of the tribulation light weakened immediately, and the Devil Emperor's magnificent body started breaking apart. Bang! The Devil Emperor's body transformed into nothingness and flew into the distance. The human ancestor gazed at the side coldly. However, a moment later, the Devil Emperor's broken body rematerialized. A beam of divine light wrapped around his body so he would not die. Go! Futian cried out. The human ancestor did not plan on letting him go. Another beam of world-slaying light dropped from the sky, transforming into the spear of destruction. It was like the Dark Sovereign's ability. It could penetrate the Emperor directly and pierced the Devil Emperor's body. But at the same time, a silhouette escaped and left. There was a huge boom and the Devil Emperor's physical body shattered, but his divine soul was not extinguished. Instead, it turned and escaped. The human ancestor wanted to continue killing it, but Yi Futian blocked him. He raised a palm. Golden light wrapped around him and pushed up the sky, blocking that attack. Everyone felt a bit of despair. The human ancestor had returned as the path. He was undying, and it was impossible to kill him. In the distance, Lady Qin and Lady Shu at Donghuang the Great, but Donghuang the Great shook his head at them. It's effective. Yi Futian looked up at the heavenly path. Back when the heavenly path had collapsed in the ancient war of gods, it had meant that the heavenly path was not undefeatable. The human ancestor was not either. The Devil Emperor's previous attack had been effective, and it caused the human ancestor to grow furious. However, the Devil Emperor had also paid a heavy price. He had used 2 lives in exchange for having his spirit soul escape. You are all looking for death, a cold voice sounded from the dome of the sky. Then doomsday divine tribulations descended from the sky. Beams of the destructive divine light of law shone down, shooting toward Yi Futian and the other emperors. Then Yi Futian's body flashed, going up to the sky. An extremely frightening beam of divine light shot from his body and crossed the sky, piercing into the heavens. Instantly, it was as if the flow of time in the heavens slowed down. Then the space began distorting and collapsing. Yi Futian's body transformed into a beam of light and went upward. The beam of light crossed over the sky in an extremely brilliant manner. Holding the spear, he stabbed into the heavens. The glow of the spear penetrated it, seeming to spear the heavens. The space inside collapsed and shattered, suffering from extreme destructiveness. At that moment, the sky of the human realm also collapsed and shattered crazily, but a frightening silhouette appeared. It stared at Yi Futian. "Let us end now," that silhouette said. As soon as he spoke, countless beams of the divine light of law fell, hitting Yi Futian's body. At that moment, Yi Futian could only feel supreme energy going through his body, penetrating his spirit soul. No one could endure the impact of this terrifying energy. The world inside Yi Futian's body was collapsing and breaking crazily. He spat out fresh blood, and his body was forced to an extremely faraway place. His physical body was about to collapse, and his spirit soul was breaking and extinguishing too. It was like his entire being was disintegrating and would soon stop existing. Bang! With a loud bang, Yi Futian's body was shaken apart. This scene shocked Donghuang the Great and the others. Their eyes stared in Yi Futian's direction, and many people had hopeless expressions. Had Yi Futian been by the human ancestor? A cold huff came from the heavens. That heavenly path had been damaged too. He had only returned after waiting for centuries and did not think that someone could pose a threat to him today. The destructive force of the law converged. He was going to kill everyone. Huh! At that time, many people gaped and looked towards Yi Futian's side. They watched as Yi Futian's broken spirit soul actually started rejoining. His physical body was converging and reforming as if he also had an undying body. Continue_reading on MYB0XN0VEL.com. This made the human ancestor let out a surprised noise. Then another gust of extremely frightening energy started gathering. He wanted to kill Yi Futian again. Donghuang the Great looked at Yi Futian and his body transformed into a blinding streak of light. He rushed toward the heavenly path. After he entered it, his entire person turned illusory. A mighty divine power spread out. It was the power of the void. Transform. Donghuang the Great uttered. His body became the path, and everything surrounding him turned into nothingness. That part of the heaven kept dissipating as if it would be eradicated and disappear under the divine power of Donghuang the Great until it no longer existed. Father. Yi Futian looked up to the dome of the sky, his heart twisting painfully. His father had always wanted to comprehend the ultimate divine power. The void was indeed one of the top divine powers. It could make everything turn into nothingness. But Yi Futian felt vaguely that even though his father had comprehended the path of the void, it was still not enough. He was not strong enough to destroy that heavenly path. The human ancestor had transformed the path for countless years, and there was still a big difference. His attack earlier with the path of time had also been extreme, and he believed that in terms of force, it was an ultimate force too. It could make time and space collapse, but it still could not kill the human ancestor. Hua Jiyu also moved toward the dome of the sky. Her dress fluttered as she released the divine power of the colorless realm to the maximum. It seeped into that part of the sky, wanting to lock up the human ancestor. The Dark Sovereign also attacked. The light of doomsday burst from her body, shooting toward the sky. Everyone was unleashing their strongest attacks to destroy the heavenly path. That part of the heavens collapsed and shattered crazily. Chaotic law and order rained down, and destructive currents went wild in the sky. "You think this will work?" the cold voice said from the heavens, making everyone feel chills over their body. Countless beams of destructive light penetrated the body of Donghuang the Great. Under the blow of the horrifying energy, even the divine power of the void lost effectiveness. Donghuang the Great's body was destroyed and disappeared. He died in the dome of the sky. The others who had attacked suffered extremely terrifying blows and were sent flying back, even getting heavily hurt. "History will not repeat." An extremely cold voice streamed from the heavens. That frightening face was extremely cold, thinking back to the past two experiences. This time, he used the lessons he had learned and did not panic. He was stronger than any previous times, returning in whole and without flaws. He was perfect and had become the true heavenly path. He was undying and unkillable. No one could ever defeat him again. Even so, he still encountered quite some trouble. This made him feel blasphemed. However, everything was about to end. He was the ultimate god. "Father." Yi Futian looked at the disappeared figure of Donghuang the Great. After comprehending the ultimate path of the void, his father had transformed into the path to destroy the human ancestor, but he had still failed. "Your Majesty." The string emperor and book deity also looked toward the vanished figure. After their master had passed away, had Donghuang the Great passed away too? Then, who could stop the human ancestor? Destructive doomsday might radiate it out of the heavens. The human ancestor would not give them the chance to lament. He wanted to kill everyone. Beams of divine light shot down murderously, going towards Yi Futian and the others, and were about to hit their targets. But just then, a formless force swept across, and the entire world seemed to freeze at that moment. Even the human ancestor's attack seemed to stop. Yi Futian felt that an invisible force shrouded the entire world at that moment. He could vaguely sense golden light, but that was illusory and not real. "This is time." That idea flashed through Yi Futian's mind. "Who is it?" "Futian." At that time, a voice spoke, and in Yi Futian's perceptions, he saw a figure. "Master." The figure in Yi Futian's perceptions was his teacher. The human ancestor has already become the path. He is undefeatable by human force. If you wish to defeat him, there is only one path, the master said to Yi Futian. "Please advise me," Yi Futian said. "Become the path," the master replied. "Become the path," Yi Futian murmured. "Master, have you become the path already? I have always been imprisoned in time. Not long ago, I finally had some enlightenment. I can help you trap him for some time, but the specifics of what to do depends on yourself." "Who are you?" A cold voice streamed from the dome of the sky. Incredible destructive force exploded, but it had no target. Everything was in a formless state. The human ancestor smelted the world and turned his body into the heavenly path. He controlled all of the material energy and comprehended the force of the original source. He himself represented the law. He was undying and unable to be killed. But at this moment, he was trapped in the formlessness. "I came from that era, just like you," the voice replied. "Time." The human ancestor had never paid attention to the teacher of the Four Corners village. To him, he was just an ancient emperor and not even a complete body. He had collected too many ancient emperors like him. It was not surprising that Donghuang the Great could meet one. He had not cared at all. As the human ancestor, he was already standing at the pinnacle of the world and had become the path. Indeed, he did not need to care, but he had never expected that the existence he had overlooked was now restraining him. You are the Time Walker, Mu Feng. The human ancestor's voice was filled with shock. It seems that you are very knowledgeable about the ancient great emperors, the master replied. Back then, the collapse of the heavenly path already put the world through tribulations. I am sure that you were a victim too. Since you already reached this cultivation state, why are you repeating it? The human ancestor did not answer. Instead, he said, why did you not die? All the gods had died under the heavenly path. The Time Walker had also been a super great emperor. How come he had not died and still lived until today's world? I was trapped in time and survived with luck, the master said. Since you could also become the path and return today, why are you taking the other side? The human ancestor's voice was cold and carried a threatening feeling. After the heavenly path collapsed, the world experienced tribulations of doomsday. After countless years, it is time for a new era, and it is not the era you want, the master continued to say. Everyone could hear their conversation clearly. They could even feel the destructive windstorm that the human ancestor released, but it could not threaten them. That force seemed to be existing in a different dimension than them. Master has a deeper understanding of time than me, Futian thought inside. If he were to defeat the human ancestor, he would have to become the path. His father had become the path of the void but still could not kill the human ancestor. Master seemed to have become the path now too. Then how should he become the path? Young master, a voice said. The string emperor walked towards Futian. Continue reading on MYB0XN0VEL. Lady Qin, Lady Shu. Futian looked at the two. The string emperor seemed to have something to say to him. Actually, your mother knew back then that if she wanted to kill the human ancestor, she could only be like him, but if you become the path, you will no longer be yourself. You will only be the path. Lady Qin looked at Futian. She seemed to be pained as she spoke. Futian understood instantly. Back then, the 8 legions under the heavenly path controlled the law of the world, but the heavenly path was only the law. It did not have a true form. The human ancestor was the same. After he became the path, he no longer truly existed. Only his consciousness existed. After his mother became the heavenly path, she disappeared and stopped existing. So if he became the path, young master, with your current cultivation, you might be able to reach the supreme level even without becoming the path and surpass the human ancestor, the string emperor continued to say. You already created the heavenly path world, and you're practically undying and immortal. You can travel across universes. Leave here and cultivate in another world. You can return and kill the human ancestor in the future. Futian seemed to understand something from her words and asked, did father know this too? The string emperor's eyes dulled, and then she nodded. Your father was like your mother, the string emperor said. They both had very resolute beliefs. They wanted to return to the glory of the ancient era and let everyone have an unrestricted cultivation world. They had worked hard for that too, but after losing your mother, you were the only one that your father had. Thus, he always felt that he owed you. As long as there is a shred of hope, he would not want you to sacrifice yourself for this ideal. So he chose to use himself as a gambling chip. Futian looked up to the dome of the sky and said, because of me, his resolute faith started swaying. Perhaps, that is the only time he swayed, the string emperor said. He hoped you could live. Naturally, Futian understood. If he lived to leave in defeat from today's battle, the world would undergo tribulations and suffer world-ending disasters. Even so, Donghuang the Great had chosen to keep it from him, not telling him. Perhaps, this was Donghuang the Great's selfishness as a father. Futian lowered his head and looked down. His eyes seemed to penetrate the vast world. He saw the tribulations of the human realm and the heaven realm. All of the 7 realms were going through tribulations. And this was only the beginning. If the human ancestor ruled over the world, he would destroy everything, upend everything. He wanted to create a world of gods, but they had to be gods that he controlled. He wanted to become the absolute ruler. I know what to do now, Futian said. He raised his head and looked toward the human ancestor with extremely resolute eyes. Even if this battle were not for the masses, it would be for his grandfather whom he had never met, his mother who had died to give birth to him, his father Donghuang the Great, the Devil Emperor, and others. He could not let the human ancestor remain in this world. He could bring the people around him and escape freely, leaving this world, but who would take revenge for all this? Countless people from the 6 legions had died in this battle, including those from the Ziwei Imperial Palace and those under the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Who would take revenge for their lives? These people had fought for their faith. Some had also fought for him. He was their faith. Countless eyes fell upon Yi Futian's body. Hua Ji Yu Dong Liu, Yu Wuchen. All of these familiar faces. They had heard the previous conversation and knew what was going to happen, but no one spoke. No one was qualified to decide for Yi Futian. This was his destiny. Turning around, Yi Futian did not meet those pairs of eyes. He was afraid that he would hesitate. With one thought, his body vanished from the spot and left this place. Seeing him leave, this part of the heavens was deathly silent. Even if I become the path, I will still exist, won't I? A voice sounded, landing in everyone's ears. It was comforting them all. This voice penetrated their hearts, and tears appeared in many people's eyes. Donghuang Diyuan stood on the side and looked toward the disappeared figure. There were tears in her pretty eyes. Her second father had died in battle too. She had learned of Yi Futian from a very young age, and she had met Yi Futian when she was 16 years old. Even though Yi Futian did not know her identity, he had always existed in her life. Was everyone in her life going to leave her? Diyuan, the string emperor and book deity, walked to Donghuang Diyuan's side, comforting her softly. To them, Donghuang Diyuan was also their child, just like Yi Futian. The strong figures in the Devil Imperial Palace of the Devil World saw the figure that had floated over and felt immense pain in their hearts. Your Majesty, they called out, only to hear the Devil Emperor say, from today on, Yu Sheng will inherit the position of the Devil World's Devil Emperor. All strong figures of the Devil World must obey the orders of the new Emperor. The solemn voice resonated throughout the dome of the sky. All the devil cultivators of the Devil World knelt onto the ground and cried out loudly, Your Majesty the Devil Emperor. The Devil Emperor looked at all those figures. Then he turned around and walked toward the Devil Abyss. His backside was filled with bleakness. After entering the Devil Abyss, he went straight to the center of the Devil Abyss. He had been carrying the responsibility of the Devil Abyss for all these years, and today, he could finally be freed. His body turned illusory, but it also expanded, becoming larger and larger. The boundlessly huge figure melded into the Devil Abyss, becoming one with the tribulations of the Devil Abyss. Yu Sheng, who was currently cultivating in the Devil Abyss, seemed to sense something. His dark eyes opened. Then Yu Sheng saw the entire Devil Abyss seemed to transform into a face, the face of the Devil Emperor. Yu Sheng, the Devil Emperor's voice traveled into his mind. Back then, the Devil Abyss had been a force equal to the heavenly path. Similarly, it also contains its own consciousness. However, it lost in the right against the heavenly path and was reduced to a prison. It nurtured the demonic lord and helped the Devil Abyss fight against the heavenly path. Countless years have passed, and I am still unable to control the power of the Devil Abyss. You absorbed the intent of the demonic lord and can already resonate with the Devil Abyss. Today, I will help you. After melding into the Devil Abyss, I will become a shred of the Devil Abyss's consciousness. I hope you can control the Devil Abyss, just like the demonic lord, and help the people of the Devil World to stop suffering the hardships of the Devil Abyss. Instead, they can use it for their cultivation. Hearing the Devil Emperor's words, Yu Sheng's expression suddenly changed. I can control the Devil Abyss without you, he said. There is no time, the Devil Emperor said. As he spoke, his body became more and more illusory, as if it could disappear at any moment. Uncle, Yu Sheng cried, standing up. I do not agree. When he spoke, the entire Devil Abyss trembled, his voice resounding throughout. This is my destiny. For countless years, I have always been enduring the pain of the Devil Abyss, and it's time for me to be freed, the Devil Emperor said. Yu Sheng, I have never pleaded to anyone in my life, But I must ask something of you. Yu Sheng's heart twisted as he looked at that face. For countless years, the cultivators of the devil world have always carried the shameful status of prisoners. However, the masses of the devil world are all strong and righteous people. Your father had his own beliefs. I do not blame him for his choice, but he made the mistake of bowing down to the others and bending his spine. Please reading on myb0xn-oval.com. The Devil Emperor continued, not long ago, the human ancestor used the devil world to threaten me into participating in the battle. I was forced to join in, but the devil world will never surrender. Thus, I finally chose to fight against the human ancestor. I do not regret it. This was not for all the beings in the world because the world has nothing to do with me. Similarly, it's not for your father and the others. Instead, it is for the devil world. Next, the human ancestor and Yi Futian will have an ultimate duel. If you can manage the devil abyss, you should also take part. If you are defeated, then you will die in battle. If you succeed, the devil world will be equal to them and create a new world together. What I ask of you is to never submit under another person. You are the kind of the devil world. Yu Sheng's eyes reddened. He was a true man, but he still grew tearful. The devil emperor had never pleaded to anyone in his life, but he was asking him to be the devil world's king. He could die in battle, but he should never surrender. The devil world had been known as prisoners for countless years. The devil emperor did not wish for the devil world to continue being the lower caste in the future and be submissive to others. If the king of the devil world bowed his head, then the cultivators of the devil world would not be able to raise their heads. Thus, the devil emperor had fought against the human ancestor, and he asked Yu Sheng to fight the human ancestor. He wanted the devil world to stand upright and legitimately in the world. If they were to create a new world, the devil world should be equal to the others as well. Yu Sheng naturally understood that the devil emperor was talking about Yi Futian. The devil emperor asked this of him because he was clear about their relationship. I promise, Yu Sheng said solemnly. The devil emperor did not stop him from fighting alongside Yi Futian. He only had one request, for the king of the devil world to never submit to someone else. The devil world is yours now. After the devil emperor spoke, his body disappeared gradually, melding completely into the devil abyss. Horrifying demonic tribulations ravaged inside the devil abyss. There was no trace of the devil emperor anymore. But Yu Sheng could feel that the devil emperor was still here, guarding him and the devil world with the devil abyss. Yi Futian's figure appeared in the void of the original realm. At present, he could sense clearly that the original realm was not a complete world. After the heavenly path had collapsed back then, it became known as the Void Realm. And now, he had returned to this land. To Yi Futian, the original realm was his homeland. Since he would become the path, he naturally chose his homeland. The space was empty, and the void was endless. He was the only person here. Yi Futian seemed even more lonely in the darkness. I'm sorry. Many figures appeared in Yi Futian's mind, and then he closed his eyes. The micro-world in his body started collapsing and caving in like crazy, transforming into a chaotic world. Yi Futian's consciousness entered it, combining with the world of chaos. Boom! With a loud boom, his physical body exploded into pieces. Many beams of light appeared in the endless darkness. These countless beams of light radiated out crazily, covering the darkness. In an instant, the light illuminated the entire mass of darkness and radiated out to the entire universe. The cultivators of the various continents and segmentums of the original realm all looked up to the sky. They saw a beam of light. In the faraway horizon, that beam of light illuminated the sky, shocking all of the cultivators. What had happened? The cultivators on all the continents stopped cultivating and walked out of their rooms. Countless people traveled through the air, gazing toward the dome of the heavens. They seemed to see a tree growing wildly in the universe enveloped in light. The tree seemed to be the tree of the universe, the tree of the world, growing between heaven and earth. The cultivators of the various continents suddenly felt something blinding. They raised their arms to cover their eyes. It was as if a formless beam of light swept over their bodies. They sensed the aura of the world, and it seemed that everything had changed, but they could not pinpoint what exactly was different. The tree in the universe gradually became illusory, as if it was fusing into the world, transforming into part of the universe. The former god's ruins continent had become vibrant and full of life. There were many cultivators of the Renhuang plain here. When they sensed the changes of the world, their hearts started pounding furiously. At that moment, they all looked up to the sky and bowed. Was this a miracle? Even a god or someone of the great emperor plane would not be able to do this, right? Unless it was a supreme figure who completed the path of the original realm today and would now have a complete law of the great path. Who was doing all of this? The people of the original realm gradually realized the changes of the world too. Meanwhile, Futian perceived all of this. Of course, he no longer had a solid shape. After becoming the path, he had no physical body, no cultivation plane, no life or death. He could truly sense the path now. He was the path. Everything in the world was him. He breathed with the universe. Every beam of light and every gust of wind were his breaths. He perceived all the beings and saw their surprise and joy. Quietly feeling all of this, Futian gradually understood why he must become the path. After becoming the path, he became one with the heavens and one with the universe. Every strand of qi flowing through the universe was him and the path. Futian sensed Qingju City. The Qingju City that had been hidden before reappeared now. A breeze blew by. Futian seemed to have come to Qingju City. With a thought, a tree appeared beside Qingju Academy. It was full of vitality and had spirituality. If he were still defeated, this tree would be the trace he left behind. After that, Futian continued to feel for everything in becoming the path. Time passed bit by bit. The human realm, human ancestor, and entire heaven realm were trapped. They were still trapped in time by his master. In the human realm, the human ancestor continued to absorb all the energy in the world, refining the human realm more completely. Even the Time Walker could not hold him back for too long. At that time, the law of the great path in the human realm seemed to have melded into time, slowly homogenizing. At the same time, a voice traveled from within. Walker, you and I are both ancient great emperors. Why must we fight? You cannot hold me back for long. Why don't you rule this world with me? Your fate has long been decided, Master said. What do you mean? The human ancestor said. Please reading on MYB0XN Uvel. To be annihilated or be swallowed, Master replied. I never believe in destiny or gods. I only believe in myself. The human ancestor's voice was frigid. This is not destiny. It was what time told me. Do not forget who I am, Master said quietly. His voice was calm. He was the Time Walker. The human ancestor suddenly lost his temper. The aggressive law of the great path hit against the time. You cannot stop me, the human ancestor said coldly. His aura spread toward the outside world. Right then, beams of tribulation light seeped into the space passageway between the devil world and human realm, entering the human realm. The human ancestor sensed the situation on that side. Then countless beams of red light surged in from that direction, continuously entering the human realm. They were tribulation forces of the apocalypse. In a concise time, endless blood-red tribulation light appeared in every corner of the human realm, rushing toward the heavenly path. Crack! The apocalyptic attack rained down, and the human realm shook. The power of the Devil Abyss. Devil Emperor, the human ancestor said coldly. Even if he had control of the Devil Abyss, this was still suicide. The human ancestor's mind twitched, and then countless beams of destructive light also rained down, countering the tribulations of the Devil Abyss. The entire human realm instantly transformed into a hellish world. All of the cities on the continents were filled with tribulation light. Yu Sheng's figure appeared in the human realm. He was shrouded with limitless tribulation light, hefting the divine battle axe of creation. The battle axe was wrapped in tribulation light, and his body was thousands of meters tall. He loomed over the world and hacked down at the path that the human ancestor had become with his battle axe. The battle axe split apart the sky. The heavens were hacked apart, turning into two halves. But at the same time, a beam of destructive light dropped down, landing in the area that Yu Sheng was in. It made Yu Sheng's spirit soul shake viciously as if it was about to disassemble. The battle shockwaves of the devil world and human realm were so horrifying that even Yi Futian, who had become the original realm heavenly path, could feel them. Yu Sheng. Yi Futian was still meditating, but he understood that he had to attack now. It would be impossible for Yu Sheng to defeat the human ancestor. Just as Yi Futian had predicted, Yu Sheng had come to fight in the human realm battlefield with the power of the devil abyss, but he still could not destroy the human ancestor. When Yu Sheng attacked with the divine battleaxe of creation, countless pairs of eyes seemed to appear in the heavens. Each pair of eyes stared at Yu Sheng, locking onto him. Yu Sheng felt time and space become disorderly. He continued to hack down with his divine battleaxe of creation, carrying the devil abyss and sweeping up to the heavens. However, a huge god appeared in the heavens. He sent out a punch, and the strength of an entire world was gathered on this fist. There were no additional movements, but this one punch could shatter a part of the sky. This punch passed through the world and sent Yu Sheng's body flying back into the passageway and devil world. Yu Sheng's body was about to explode, but he had formed the super demonic form, which was known as an undying form, and that was why he did not break apart. Even so, he still spat out a mouthful of blood. He was badly hurt. However, how many people in the world could survive a hit from the human ancestor? The evil emperor, one of the former 6 emperors, could not do it. The devil emperor could not do it quickly either, and Donghuang the Great had become the path to fight but still died. If the devil world wants to be wiped out, I can help you, the human ancestor announced. Mr. Time had left when Yu Sheng attacked, so the human ancestor was no longer restrained. However, while he was nurturing his strength, a loud explosive noise suddenly appeared. The entire human realm seemed to be collapsing and breaking apart continuously. A supreme and peerless path was invading, wanting to destroy the entire human realm. The heavens of the human realm were being destroyed madly. The human ancestor knew that Yi Futian had become the path and had returned to fight again. Yi Futian had become even more dangerous now. He was even stronger and had advanced further than his mother had. Countless beams of light from the path penetrated the human realm, destroying all existences, destroying everything in this dimension. The human ancestor's face appeared. His cold eyes stared at that side. With a thought, countless beams of destructive light also shot out murderously and clashed against the other lights. The world started cracking apart instantly. The human realm shook violently, and many frightening spatial cracks appeared. Earthquakes and tsunamis burst forth on countless cultivation continents, and the tribulations of the apocalypse rained down. 2 faces appeared in the heavens, Yi Futian and the human ancestors' faces, respectively. The entire human realm was collapsing and caving in crazily. That was the force that Yi Futian brought over. The power that could annihilate time wanted to utterly destroy the heavenly path. Do you think you can destroy me like this? The human ancestor stared at Yi Futian and said, I came from the ancient times and had transformed into the heavenly path many years ago. I am an undying god. The human realm has collapsed, and you will die too, Yi Futian replied. Really? My strength comes from the entire human realm. The human ancestor's voice was cold. After he spoke, the collapse of space slowed down, and the entire world seemed to coagulate. A frightening world force was blocking everything. Kaboom! Right then, Yu Sheng came again with the power of the devil abyss. Carried by the devil abyss, he hacked down at the human realm. The tribulations of the devil abyss instantly swept through the human realm, causing cracks to appear in the coagulated world. The human ancestor's eyes were icy. He took a deep breath, and abruptly, every being and item in the human realm turned into energy that he could use. Annihilate, the human ancestor uttered. As soon as he spoke, an immense quaking swept forth, and all forces destroying the time were extinguished. He carried the energy of the entire human realm and unleashed destructive shockwaves. Yi Futian felt that he was undergoing a powerful attack. The path that he had become was shaken apart and destroyed. This god that had existed since the era of the heavenly path's collapse was frighteningly strong. However, Yi Futian was also undying nowadays. He had returned as the path and was practically an endless and undefeatable existence like the human ancestor. At this time, a beam of black light suddenly projected out of the human realm. It was an extreme black. It seemed as if it came from hell. This beam of black light hovered above the human realm. On the battlefield, the human ancestor seemed to sense the energy contained within and glanced at it. It was a black lotus. Strands of chi emanated from the black lotus, transforming into a pitch-black figure. It was a young girl. When she appeared, she chanted words, and the surrounding world instantly darkened. It kept expanding, extending throughout the vast space until the entire world transformed into darkness. It was like it had been cursed. Qingyao. Yi Futian did not expect that Yi Qingyao would come to the battlefield. Had she already inherited the power of darkness? Plus, the power of death that Yi Qingyao carried was no longer the simple divine power of death. It was absolute darkness and destruction. She had belonged to darkness and destruction since birth, standing opposite of life and creation. The human ancestor sent down a beam of destructive light towards Yi Qingyao, but when it approached her, the destructive light actually faded and was extinguished. With Yi Qingyao's body as the center, everything in the world fell into silence, returning to stillness. There was no vitality and everything was about to be annihilated. She walked forward. Everything in her path sank into absolute deathly stillness. She was going to bring death to the entire world. The human ancestor discovered that, under the patch of death, he was no longer able to borrow energy from the world. Everything returned to stillness. There was no energy that he could borrow. Boom! Countless beams of apocalyptic light shot down murderously at Yi Qingyao, but a similarly frightening intent of the path swept forth. It shrouded his power. Yi Futian had acted, causing the human ancestor's attack to be shattered and destroyed. Soon, Yi Qingyao had walked to every corner of the world, spreading death across the vast world. Every place that had life was now under death and stillness. The tribulations of the devil abyss pierced into the heavenly path, dyeing the entire dome of the sky blood red. Yi Futian's mind twitched. The sky continued to collapse and shatter. The scene right now was like how the heavenly path had collapsed in the war of the heavenly path in the ancient times. How can you surpass death? The human ancestor's voice filled the void. He was speaking to Yi Qingyao. I use darkness as my sacrifice and surpass darkness. Human ancestor, you bestowed this upon me, a voice said. It was not Yi Qingyao's figure, but the dark sovereign. She had sacrificed herself. Bastard, the human ancestor bellowed. Clearly, he also sensed the danger. You planned everything well, but today, it will come to nothing. Today, you will be destroyed, the dark sovereign's voice rang out once again. Yi Futian descended madly with the path, causing the path created by the human ancestor to continue crumbling. The human ancestor's face in the heavens twisted. He finally realized that he was not truly undying or undefeatable. He could also die. If the heavenly path shattered and everything returned to stillness, then he would also stop existing. The ancient heavenly path had collapsed in the battle of the gods. Naturally, he could as well. Yi Futian, I will rule the human realm and you will rule the original realm. We will not interfere with each other, the human ancestor's voice streamed out. He seemed to be compromising, wanting to take a step back. Yi Futian ignored him. He was still destroying all of this. I control the most primitive power of the world and I'm extremely familiar with the nature of power. If you continue like this, you will accompany me in death, the human ancestor continued to say, but Yi Futian's group was still unmoved. The three of them did not stop. They continued to destroy everything crazily. The human ancestor felt his power weakening continuously. His face became more twisted, he was seemingly struggling. Yi Futian, have you thought about the consequences if we all die here today? The human ancestor continued to threaten them. You must disappear, an unrefusable voice replied. Suddenly, the human ancestor started laughing uproariously. I plotted for so many years and thought it was just a game. I did not expect to be defeated today. But in this case, let everything be destroyed. To nothingness. The instant the human ancestor spoke, Yi Futian suddenly felt extreme danger. All the remaining energy of the human realm exploded simultaneously in that instant. He could feel that when that energy exploded, everything would return to nothingness. It seemed to be the final state of his father's ultimate divine power. The human ancestor's face closed his eyes. Everything in his surroundings also turned to nothingness. That moment, he seemed to return to countless years ago when his mother and father were still there, raising him, and his master was teaching him cultivation. All of this had been destroyed in the War of the Gods. He had lost everything. And now, everything was finally ending. Without Yi Futian having to attack again, everything in the world was reduced to nothingness. The human ancestor controlled the heavenly path. He comprehended creation and also comprehended destruction. Once he unleashed to nothingness, everything would transform into nothingness, including himself. Yi Futian felt that his path was scattering wildly too, turning into the void. He could not help but feel fear. Yu Sheng and Qing Yao. The power of time enveloped the entire world, but it was useless. When everything was transformed into the void, there would be no time. Yi Futian used all of the intent from his path to envelope Yu Sheng and Yi Qingyao. In the span of a thought, he made his last-ditch effort. The next moment, his consciousness was also reduced to nothingness. The entire human realm disappeared. Under the human ancestor's ultimate destructive force, everything was turned into the void. Everything in the human realm no longer existed. It was as if this universe and world had never existed. A long while later, a group of figures suddenly traveled through the air of this dead world, appearing in the void. Strands of qi flowed from their bodies and gathered together, forming the human ancestor's figure. "I will return," the formed body said coldly. Yi Futian and the others should have gotten destroyed too, right? Only a sleeping consciousness should remain from the heavenly path of the original realm too. Who would be able to stop him in the future? "You will not return again," another voice streamed out at this time. The human ancestor's expression changed in shock. Then he saw a handsome and extraordinary figure appear before him. "It's you," the human ancestor said coldly, staring at that figure. He watched as the youth extended a hand. Instantly, a horrifying windstorm vortex appeared. The human ancestor and those figures were all swallowed into the windstorm. Watching the human ancestor disappear, the youth raised his head and glanced at the endless void. "Avenging you has been my long-term obsession," he murmured to himself. "Today, I returned it all to you." One year later, the original realm was a complete world. The heavenly path no longer lacked anything. All life was thriving. The divine prefecture, heaven realm, world of Buddhism, and even the dark world had combined with the original realm. They took up vast territories in the original realm, becoming superforces. They had originally developed in the original realm, and when Yi Futian had become the path, he had enveloped it all. Now, the realms all agreed for them to form a great world together. Nowadays, the world had many superforces. The heaven realm was ruled by the string emperor and book deity together. There were many gods below them. The Donghuang imperial palace was ruled by Donghuang Diyuan and had many great emperors under her. The Spirit Mountain was still managed by the Buddha and had many Buddhists under him. The Ziwei Imperial Palace was ruled by the old forces of the Ziwei Segmentum. Four Corner Village was a force that had belonged to the Divine Prefecture but now separated from them. They were independent of the Divine Prefecture and ruled by Yi Futian's four main disciples. In the Dark Court, Yi Qingyao inherited the position of the new Dark Sovereign. There was another new super force, the Heavenly Mandate Court. It was governed by Jiyu Dongliu and also had many strong figures of the Great Emperor plane under him. The Heavenly Mandate Court was situated in the original Heavenly Mandate realm, and they ruled the former 3,000 realms of the Great Path, which was the homeland that Yi Futian had grown up in. They were like the 8 legions of the former Heavenly Path, known as the 7 great forces of the current Heavenly Path. The legion members who had participated in battle with Yi Futian back then who had not died all became the core members of the various great forces. They were all being trained as future great emperors. However, What was regretful was that the heavenly path had gone still. It had not appeared again after the battle between Futian and the human ancestor. Nowadays, news of the battle from a year ago had already spread throughout the world. Futian had become the path, which was why they now had a new world. In the last moment, the human ancestor had returned everything to nothingness, destroying everything, including Futian's consciousness. In the most critical moment, Futian had sent Yu Sheng and Qingyao out of that dimension. At the same time, he and the human realm were destroyed together, ultimately turning into the void. However, Futian had already become the path. He was one with the heavenly path. As long as the heavenly path was not destroyed, Futian would not die either. Some people guessed that only Futian's consciousness had been wiped, but he was still there within the heavenly path. Others guessed that Futian was only in slumber and would awaken one day in the future. No matter what, everyone in the world was filled with gratitude toward Futian. The battle from 1 year ago was like an apocalyptic battle. The beings of the world had been turned to ashes, and countless cultivators had died. If Futian had not stopped this, the human ancestor might have truly destroyed the world. Futian's sacrifice for this had been to become the path and protect the present world. One could say that Futian had created this new world. Thus, the Heaven Court, Donghuang Imperial Palace, and other forces called the present world the Futian era. Last year had been the first year of the Futian calendar. The top 7 forces of the world all believed in Futian, and the people of the world were also filled with gratitude, so naturally, no one objected. They all accepted it. The current era was a new age. The period after the heavenly path had collapsed became known as the Age of Forbidden Gods. With Futian as the heavenly path, it was a new era, and the Age of Gods had reappeared. Within 1 year, the various realms gradually recovered their liveliness. Under Donghuang Diyuan's rule, order returned to the Divine Prefecture. The 18 domains of the Divine Prefecture all had new rulers. Many of them were strong figures of the Great Emperor plane. Of course, those who once had conflicts with Futian had all stepped down from power. The great emperors of the ancient god clans who had not died in battle had all been dethroned by Donghuang Diyuan. 2 huge statues stood atop the steps of the Donghuang Imperial Palace, rising into the sky. One was Donghuang the Great. The other was Emperor Yi Qing. The twin emperors were now guarding the Donghuang Imperial Palace as statues. Today, a few gods came to visit Donghuang Diyuan, but they were met with a closed door and did not get to see her. Donghuang Diyuan was rectifying and revitalizing the Divine Prefecture. She had given the order to make the martial arts of the Divine Prefecture prosper. After working on all of this, she rarely appeared in public. At the moment, Donghuang Diyuan was in the Great Emperor courtyard of the Imperial Palace. She sat quietly and listened while an elder sat on the ground beside her. He was telling her stories from many years ago. That boy was both smart and mischievous back then. The older disciples all protected their little brother. Thinking back now, that must have been the best times, the elder said with a smile. He was Mr. Du, whom Donghuang Diyuan had brought back to the Divine Prefecture that year. Then what? What else happened? Donghuang Diyuan asked. Your Majesty, would you still like to hear? Mr. Du asked. The Majesty in question was sitting on the ground, her eyes flashing brightly. She seemed to be curious about these ancient stories, wanting to know everything. She did not seem like the current ruler of the Divine Prefecture at all. Yes. Donghuang Diyuan nodded thoughtfully. Sure. Mr. Du chuckled and continued telling those ancient stories. The main character of the stories was an 18-year-old boy. That era seemed to be long, long ago. Outside the original realm, in the void, a cultivator suddenly came to a stop. Divine light flashed on his body, and he had a shocking aura. This was a super great emperor from ancient times. Should have lost her, right? He thought inside, cold light flashing past his eyes. But right at that moment, a dark figure appeared out of thin air. The void became even darker. A young girl's face appeared. There were no emotions in her eyes, as if she was one of the living dead. Seeing her appearance, the great emperor's expression changed in shock. Everything is in the past, he said. Back then, the human ancestor had controlled everyone, and we were forced to participate in the battle. Why must you kill us all? The girl reached out her hand. An illusory black lotus shrouded over the other's body. In an instant, everything returned to deathly stillness. All the vitality of the great emperor from the ancient times evaporated instantly, returning to stillness. He fell quiet and then was swallowed by the black lotus until he turned to nothing. After killing him, the girl's figure disappeared into the darkness. In the battle back then, Futian had sent her and Yu Sheng out of the human realm. The human realm had been destroyed, and after that, Qingyao and Yu Sheng started on the path of revenge. They killed practically all of the ancient great emperors who had participated in the battle. But even so, Qingyao was still not satisfied. She wanted everyone to pay. Thus, those who had escaped would forever face her pursuit. The Heavenly Mandate Court controlled the 3,000 realms of the Great Path and was situated in the original Heavenly Mandate realm. The Heavenly Mandate Academy was under their control. This was where the Heavenly Mandate Court trained their juniors and disciples. In addition, the current 3,000 realms of the Great Path was nothing like before. They would evolve soon. There was no reason other than the cultivators who had followed Futian out before had all returned. Many of these people were strong figures in the Great Emperor Plane. Now that they returned to their homelands, they did not only return to cultivate. They were also responsible for teaching the path. Futian becoming the path had created this new era, so they would also contribute their strength to the current world. Lord Taishian, Emperor Nan, and many others returned to their original places to teach the path. In addition, Do Jiao, Xiao Muyu, and the others cultivated in the 9 supreme imperial realms while taking up the position of elder in the Heavenly Mandate Court. It went without saying how powerful the 9 supreme imperial realms were. At the same time in the 3,000 realms of the Great Path, Emperor Xia had also returned to Emperor Xia's realm, continuing to sit on the royal throne. He had wanted to pass it on to Xia Qingyuan, but Xia Qingyuan disagreed. Thus, a legend began to spread in Emperor Xia's realm that the princess of the realm was now a strong figure of the Great Emperor Plane. Over this past year, it was said that Xia Qingyuan had saved many people. She was the god of life and could revive people from death. In addition, there was another sword emperor in Lihan Palace, sword master of Lihan. One could imagine how strong Emperor Xia's realm was. Furthermore, Emperor Xia's realm also had the 9-state continent. According to legends, that was the homeland of Futian, the master of the heavenly path. Do Zhon and his group also returned to their homeland and rebuilt the ultimate holy palace, continuing to teach the path in the 9-state continent. Even the sword saint returned to the eastern barren territory, returning to the cottage of Book Mountain. 4th and 5th brothers returned as well, accompanying the first brother. 2nd sister and 3rd brother stayed in the Heavenly Mandate Academy to govern the entire divine prefecture, so they were unable to return. They could only visit occasionally. The sounds of book recitations streamed out of a classroom in Qingju Academy of Qingju City. The youths were reading and writing in one of the classrooms. There was an extremely handsome middle-aged man at the lecture podium, though he already had white hair. "The lesson ends here," the man said now with a smile. "Yes, teacher." The youths stood up and bowed. Then a mischievous boy asked the middle-aged man, "Teacher, is the person in the legend you told us real? If I cultivate to the pinnacle, can I really move mountains and fill the seas? Not only will you be able to move mountains and fill seas, you can even become the sun and moon," the man said with a smile. "Teacher, have you seen it before?" someone asked. "Of course. One of my former students could do it," the man said, chuckling. His one eye could turn into the sun and the other could turn into the moon. He could spit out divine thunder from his mouth. Hearing his words, uproarious laughter filled the classroom. "Teacher, you're so imaginative," a youth said while laughing loudly. His voice was innocent. "You're bragging too much." "Then teacher, where is your student now?" a girl asked innocently. "He is omnipresent," the middle-aged man answered. The younglings obviously did not believe them. Even though their teacher was very attractive, his words were too exaggerated. "Sister Nyenyu," someone called to the figure outside the school. Hua Nianyu smiled and nodded. The children all swarmed over, surrounding Hua Nianyu. Hua Fengliu chuckled and then left the room alone. Outside, a white-haired elder looked at Hua Fengliu's backside with ineffable respect in his eyes. It was even reverence. As the helmsman of the Qingju Academy, he had heard some legendary stories, while Hua Fengliu's student was the creator of these legends. Nowadays, the teacher had brought his daughter back to Qingju Academy to teach the younger generation of disciples. He naturally understood what kind of honor this was. But could he still create another legend in the future? It was probably impossible. Perhaps, this was also the sustenance of the soul for the teacher. There was a simple residence beside Qingju Academy. Rich vegetation grew beside it. One of the trees was more eye-catching than the rest. According to the people of the academy, no one had noticed this tree before. It had not been attractive at all, but one day, it suddenly grew into a tree that reached for the sky. It was extremely leafy, and when a breeze blew past, the branches and leaves swayed as if they were alive. At the moment, graceful music streamed out from under the tree. It was lovely to the ears and every note pulsed, seeming to be full of emotion. The woman playing the instrument looked perfect and flawless. She seemed to be otherworldly, like one of the 9 heavenly maidens, not mundane. Right then, another woman came out of the academy and came to this side. It was Hua Nianyu. She stopped and sat on a stone, supporting her chin with both hands. She listened to the music quietly. As if entering that beautiful artistic conception, a gorgeous image appeared in her mind. In the image, there was a peaceful little city, a beautiful lake, and a small boat swaying in the lake. A young man and woman were on the boat, hugging one another. Moonlight showered down, illuminating their bodies like a beautiful painting. A long while later, the music gradually stopped. The performer, Hua Jiyu, had a faint smile in her eyes. Her smile was extremely brilliant, as if she had put herself in the artistic conception. 1 year ago, the String Emperor had wanted her to rule over the Heaven Court, but Hua Jiyu left instead. She returned to her homeland, Qingju City. Their most beautiful memories were here. After arriving in Qingju City, Hua Jiyu naturally discovered this large tree. She could sense Yi Futian's aura from this tree. She knew that Yi Futian must have come back here too. Ever since then, Hua Jiyu built a yard here and would play her qin under the tree every day, living a life of seclusion and peace from the world. "Sister," Hua Nianyu called with a smile, "do you think brother-in-law can hear your playing?" "Of course he can." Hua Jiyu nodded seriously. "Then he must be very happy too, knowing that you think of him so much every day," Hua Nianyu said, laughing. Hua Jiyu chuckled and said, "Nianyu, you do not have to visit me every day. I feel peace here, and I am content." She did not feel lonely while playing her instrument here every day because she knew that Yi Futian was here. "Okay, I got it." Hua Nianyu nodded with a smile. She visited every day because naturally, she was worried that Hua Jiyu would feel lonely or sad. Even though she also felt sad, she never revealed it before her sister. She hoped that her sister could be happy. Please reading on myboxnovel.com. After Hua Nianyu left, Hua Jiyu continued to play her music. The pulsing music notes were like songs from heaven. They streamed into the tree, and the leaves on the tree rustled, seeming to dance with the music. But right then, the music came to an abrupt stop. Hua Jiyu looked to the front and saw a figure float over before her. It was also a beautiful woman. She landed softly, her eyes staring at the tree. She walked forward slowly, moving step by step toward that tree. When she stood under the tree, there were already translucent teardrops in the corner of her eyes. The woman reached out and touched the tree trunk. "Is it you?" she asked, voice trembling. Hua Jiyu watched this all quietly. Her gaze fell upon the woman who had arrived, and sadness also rose in her heart. "Qingyuan, it's him," she whispered. She naturally knew the feelings Xia Qingyuan had towards Yi Futian. Right now, she could feel that Xia Qingyuan's emotions were the same as hers. Hearing Hua Jiyu's voice, Xia Qingyuan's tears started streaming down uncontrollably. Her hands trembled slightly as she seemed to caress Yi Futian's body. Xie Qingyuan had been hiding her emotions and had never shown her feelings before Yi Futian. She had always loved him wordlessly and hid it in her heart. She could accept all of this too. Once, she had thought that when all of this ended, she would return to Emperor Xia's realm. She would be satisfied to watch Yi Futian reach the top and for all to be well. However, when everything ended, it had not been what she had imagined. Yi Futian had disappeared. Everyone said that he had died. Xie Qingyuan could not accept this result. This past year, she returned to Emperor Xia's realm and performed acts of kindness, saving people, but it was a way to numb herself. She was like a soulless body, only wanting to spread Yi Futian's faith in this way. Not long ago, she wanted to come to visit Yi Futian's homeland, see where he had grown up, and follow in his footsteps. However, after arriving here, she sensed a familiar aura. Thus, she came and saw the tree before her eyes. At this moment, she finally lost control of all the feelings built up in her heart. They burst out violently. She had kept these emotions hidden for years, not only 1 or 2 days. When did he come here? Xie Qingyuan asked Hua Jiyu, tears streaming from her eyes. He was here when I returned, Hua Jiyu answered. She walked to Xie Qingyuan's side and hugged her gently. Xie Qingyuan did not recoil. She leaned into Hua Jiyu's shoulder and cried. Only they could understand this kind of emotion. At this moment, their feelings were the same. Has he appeared before? Xie Qingyuan asked softly. Hua Jiyu shook her head. She worked hard to control her emotions as she smiled and said gently, Qingyuan, we can accompany him here together. Xie Qingyuan looked at the big tree and asked, Can I? Of course. Hua Jiyu nodded. Jiyu, Xie Qingyuan gazed at Hua Jiyu and said, I am willing to become a tree and accompany him here. I can withstand the wind and rain with him until he returns. And if does not return? Hua Jiyu asked, voice trembling. Then I will accompany him forever. Xie Qingyuan's teary eyes were so resolute. Unshed tears also appeared in Hua Jiyu's eyes. She could no longer hold back. Looking at Xie Qingyuan's eyes, tears flowed out, and she nodded, saying, Okay. Thank you. A faint smile appeared on Xie Qingyuan's lips. Then she walked to the tree's side. Her body gradually dissolved, transforming into a tree of life to keep Yi Futian company. The branches of this tree of life kept swaying without stop, going toward the tree on its side. They intertwined, accompanying one another. Rustles came from the tree of life, seeming to cheer or sing. There was no sadness, only company. She was willing to become a tree and stay by his side, accompanying him as they experienced the wind and rain, experiencing the blazing sun and lightning. She felt no regrets at all. She could not stay by his side in life, but now, they could be companions for eternity. Was this not beautiful? Seeing all of this, tears flowed from Hua Jiyu's face endlessly. A moment later, she sat down to play her instrument. The music notes pulsed as she began playing music again. But this time, the music was filled with sadness, throwing one into depression. Ever since Yi Futian became the path, the 7 superforces governed the world's law. Everything seemed to be at peace, but there were still some storms and waves. Especially for the 7 great forces, they knew that the world still faced threats. Nowadays, as the rulers of the world law, they were responsible for safeguarding it and protecting the current world for Yi Futian. The city of the ruins was a free city. It was one of the wealthiest main cities in the universe, filled with strong figures. The 7 superforces established a mutual stronghold here, where they could arrive at any time. It was the former Yi Imperial Palace. There was a huge battle happening in the sky outside the Yi Imperial Palace, above the city of the ruins. 2 super-strong figures were facing one another in the sky. There were many top figures behind them too. They were all in the Great Emperor Plain. One of them had an unrestrained aura. It was Jiyu Dongliu. On the other hand, across from him was an elder in a beastly robe. He had very thick hair and a burlesque figure. He was short but was filled with an incomparably aggressive aura, like a wild beast. This was a great emperor of a beast clan. Everything is unstoppable now. You should follow the heavens' orders so that you can be spared. If you continue your stubborn resistance, you will only meet death. The elder's voice was like a grand bell, reverberating through the heavens and shaking the sky. Countless people in the city of the ruins below looked up at the vast sky, feeling shaken inside. This elder was a super-strong figure who had come to the original realm. 2 ancient emperors from the Yi imperial palace had died in his hands. This was why Jiyu Dongliu, ruler of the Heavenly Mandate Academy, had come personally. Jiyu Dongliu did not speak. 2 beams of frightening divine light shot out of his eyes, transforming into battle swords that stabbed toward the elder. The elder huffed coldly. Instantly, a huge demonic image appeared before his body. A horrifying demonic dragon walked out of it and ripped the sword apart. The elder's gaze swept towards Jiyu Dongliu. Many demonic images appeared in the sky. In a moment, demonic chi shook the heavens. These demonic images contained true dragons, divine phoenixes, Kirin, Xuanwu, Daotai, chaos, and demons. They shrouded the sky and revolved around the land. Violent chi shook the heavens. Even the God's Ruins continent that was extremely far away below could feel that overwhelming might, and the people's hearts shuddered uncontrollably. Who was that elder? He was like the ancestor of the demon beast world. Every demon god image released an aura at the level of a demon monarch. It was exceedingly horrifying. Jiyu Dongliu glanced at him, and, with a thought, a huge grinding disk matrix appeared with him as the center. It covered and blocked out the sun. There were immortal monsters and demon gods on this great matrix. Powerful divine might exploded from the matrix, seeming to have supreme divine power from ancient times. The elder furrowed his brows and uttered a sound from his lips. Instantly, great demons burst out of the demon god images. They shook the world and ripped apart the void. However, at the same time, immortal monsters and demon gods also burst out of Jiyu Dongliu's divine prefecture matrix. Please reading on myboxnovel.com. The great aggressive demons clashed violently, tearing apart each other's bodies. Some demon gods descended from the sky, killing everything. There were also immortal deities holding sharp swords who stabbed into the sky. Everything was getting destroyed and charging toward the elder. The elder extended his arms. They were filled with limitless strength. He swung his arms and sent out an attack. The fist intent transformed into the power of ancient demon gods, shaking the heavens. It flattened everything and crushed the immortal demons. Jiyu Dongliu extended his hand, and instantly, countless runes appeared before the elder. There were only 9 words in these countless symbols: power, direction, harmony, healing, premonition, knowing, dimension, creation, and enlightenment. These 9 words became the path. Every rune contained immense divine power, as if Jiyu Dongliu's silhouette was there. He lifted a finger, and instantly, the limitless ancient words shot towards the elder. The elder's fist intent shattered the heavens and blasted toward the words, causing them to disintegrate. However, the words kept growing stronger. They were endless and forced the elder to keep retreating. POW. Blood seeped out of the elder's fist, and his arm trembled. Finally, an ancient word dropped down and ripped apart his fist, passing through his arm. His body wanted to retreat, but countless words fell at the same time, penetrating his body. Every rune contained immense divine power. Countless beams of light penetrated him at the same time. The elder's body was annihilated at once, turning into dust. Jiyu Dongliu scanned the other strong figures and said coldly, "All invaders will be killed without mercy." As soon as he finished speaking, the words started down again. Many of these comers were top figures, but they were all killed on the spot. The battle ended not long after, but Jiyu Dongliu's eyes did not seem relaxed. Instead, he seemed graver. He knew that many strong figures from the outside were hiding in this world. In fact, super great emperors had started appearing among these people. The invading universe was very strong. If they invaded from all fronts one day, what would happen? It seemed that another horrible war would occur again. "Send someone to watch the entrance and report up at any commotion," Jiyu Dongliu ordered. Yes, Your Majesty, someone said, accepting the order. Jiyu Dongliu led his group away. Heaven Realm, Heaven Court. Two figures stood atop the heavenly palace, gazing into the distance. These two were the String Emperor and Book Deity, who were governing the Heaven Realm now. But even though they were the rulers of the Heaven Realm, they did not feel happy at all. Everyone they were familiar with had died. The princess had left them that year, Donghuang the Great had been killed in battle, and their young master had gone too. It was like they had lost their emotional support. All they could do now was protect the new world that their young master had created. Kaboom! Right then, an extremely horrifying aura suddenly appeared above the Heaven Court. Who is it? Many figures traveled through the air and looked toward the sky above the Heaven Court with serious eyes. That horrifying aura shrouded the entire Heaven Court. The frightening might weighed down. The String Emperor and Book Deity's expressions were shocked, too, as they stared to that side. Who was coming to invade them? Boom! A beam of pitch-black divine light penetrated the Heaven Court directly, opening up an ancient path. Then a figure came out of it, hovering above the Heaven Court. This figure was extremely handsome. His eyes scanned the Heaven Court indifferently. Seeing him, many strong figures of the Heaven Court felt their hearts skip a beat. Many cultivators recognized this person. He was back. Yes, they had actually forgotten about him. He had not participated in that apocalyptic world. They did not know that even though he had not attended, he had appeared when the war ended. Me. He scanned the crowd and said, "What, you don't recognize me anymore?" Ji Wudao, the former heir of the Heaven Court and known as the modern Heavenly Emperor, had left after losing to Yi Futian. Now, he had returned to the Heaven Court. Great Sky Lords Black and White Almighty, the 4 Heavenly Kings, the 9 Star Lords, and many strong figures in the Heaven Court had once viewed Ji Wudao as their master. Now that they saw he had returned, they felt very troubled feelings. The expressions of the String Emperor and Book Deity changed as well. Ji Wudao's aura was now terrifying. He had been the princess's disciple, but he had not been willing to aid the young master. His talent and abilities were also very frightening. The chaotic heavenly swallowing method that he cultivated was especially horrifying. Ji Wudao, why are you back? The String Emperor asked. Naturally, it is to take back what is mine, Ji Wudao answered, glancing at the String Emperor. What you had were all bestowed upon you by the princess, but you were too ambitious, so the later situation happened. The Heaven Realm was never yours, the String Emperor said, but Ji Wudao cut her off. A horrifying aura appeared in the dome of the sky. Looking at the String Emperor and Book Deity, he said, "Seeing as you were her maids before, I will allow you a respectful death." After he spoke, divine light descended from the sky and landed directly on the bodies of the String Emperor and Book Deity. Their divine powers erupted in an attempt to fight it off, but the gold divine light annihilated the space instantly. Their spirit souls scattered directly, and they died without being able to resist at all. The respectful death in Ji Wudao's terms was that he did not swallow them up. The strong figures of the Heaven Court saw Ji Wudao's aggression, and their expressions dropped. After returning, he had become even more terrifying. He was practically undefeatable. Ji Wudao looked down, and everyone in the Heaven Court became fearful. Then the great Sky Lords Black and White Almighty bowed, announcing loudly, "I pay my respects to the Heavenly Emperor." "I pay my respects to the Heavenly Emperor," the strong figures of the Heaven Court all said, one after another. Their voices rang through the void. Many people had initially followed Ji Wudao. After all, the situation had changed, and Yi Futian had died. It was logical that the Heavenly Emperor's position would be returned to Ji Wudao. Ji Wudao had returned to the Heaven Court and killed the String Emperor and Book Deity who had been ruling the Heavenly Realm. Afterward, he reorganized the forces of the Heaven Court, aggressively killing the people who were not willing to obey him. They had to choose to either follow him or die. In one night, the Heaven Court's master changed. Ji Wudao became the new master of the Heavenly Realm, snatching back the position of the Heavenly Emperor. The other forces naturally received the news too. When they learned that Ji Wudao had returned and taken the heavenly realm, all the forces were shaken up. Ji Wudao had already been extremely strong back then. He had once attacked the human realm and was known as the monstrous figure of the world, equal to Yi Futian. Now that he had returned, he had killed the string emperor and book deity easily, so he had definitely gotten stronger, but it was hard to guess what level he was at. Your Majesty, all the top figures of the heavenly realm have arrived, Black Almighty said. With his hands behind his back, Ji Wudao gazed into the distance and said, "Those who died all contributed their strength to this world. They fought for their ideals and did not surrender today either. Their families and friends will not be affected after their deaths." The strong figures behind him were shaken. With extreme fear, they lowered onto one knee and said, "We all followed your Majesty into war before. We always believed that the position of the heavenly emperor belonged to your Majesty." Ji Wudao said that those people did not surrender and seemed to vaguely respect them. Meanwhile, they were the traitors who were now obeying Ji Wudao. "I know. I do not intend to blame you all," Ji Wudao said in response. However, Black and White Almighty knew why Ji Wudao was unwilling to approach the people who came to visit. Many of those people were not part of Ji Wudao's old forces. Instead, they had surrendered. Clearly, to Ji Wudao, these people did not have the spirit that cultivators should have. "I did not think that so many things happened after I left this world. The 7 realms encountered such tribulations," Ji Wudao murmured, looking into the distance. After the defeat in battle that year, he used the passageway to the outside world and left this universe, going towards another world. After he returned, he witnessed the ultimate battle. He also saw that the human ancestor still wanted to be reborn and got swallowed by him. "Your ploy was correct, and your choice was correct too. He did well, much better than I had imagined," Ji Wudao said, looking up to the sky. Behind him, Black and White Almighty and the others all felt shocked, but they remained in their kneeling posture and did not rise. The Ji Wudao that they knew was extremely arrogant and talented. He always saw himself as the future heavenly emperor and wanted to inherit the intent of his master. What he never imagined was that none of this was for him. Instead, it was for Yi Futian. Thus, he lost his mind. With Ji Wudao's arrogance and pride, he was unable to accept this. That was why everything that followed happened. But today, Ji Wudao actually admitted with his own words that her choice had been correct. He gave recognition to her choice and to Yi Futian. Naturally, Ji Wudao also realized by now that she indeed was not selfish. She chose Yi Futian to be her own descendant because Yi Futian was the most suitable one. In the end, he had to become the path to do it all. In a way, her choosing him had led to his death. After knowing all of this, Ji Wudao did not feel as much hatred anymore. Please reading on myboxnovel.com. His mindset had become calmer and more aloof. He seemed to understand Yi Futian. However, he didn't cut everything off cleanly and left behind many problems, Ji Wudao continued to say. "In that case, I will take over and complete everything after this. I will do better than him, and you will see it." Black and White Almighty felt speechless inside. Ji Wudao's obsession truly ran deep. All this time, he just wanted to complete her dying wish and was incomparably respectful towards her. It had long been carved into his bones, carved into his soul. Until today, when she had already disappeared, he still wanted to receive her recognition. "Why bother? Notify the other forces to meet me at the heavenly realm in 7 days. The heaven court of the heavenly realm should stand at the peak of the present world, standing above all the gods and rule everything in the world." Ji Wudao spoke calmly, but his voice was filled with boundless aggression. The people behind him naturally understood which forces he was talking about. Nowadays, the 7 forces ruled the world law together, and there was no hierarchy. But Ji Wudao had returned, and he wanted the heaven realm to stand at the top, becoming the absolute ruler. The other forces all had to come to bow down and submit to him. "Yes, Your Majesty." The people behind him left after accepting the order. They knew what they had to do. 7 days later, the Divine Prefecture Donghuang Imperial Palace, Heavenly Mandate Academy, Spirit Mountain, and other places all received news that Ji Wudao ordered them to travel over in 7 days. They had to bow down to Ji Wudao and take him as their ruler. This news quickly spread through the cultivation world and became a hot topic among the cultivators. After Yi Futian fought against the human ancestor and died, the 7 forces governed the world law together. They did not expect Ji Wudao to appear and take the heaven realm back. Now, he even let out the news, demanding the other forces to make obeisance. They had to view the heaven realm as the ruler of everything in the world. The power of this news was imaginable. It swept through the entire world with frightening force, spreading with the fastest speed. The catastrophe 1 year ago caused the world's information channels to be more connected. Now, everyone knew about the current situation of the world. But those forces were all helping Yi Futian manage the world law. How could they submit to Ji Wudao? If they did not submit to him, what would happen? Would there be another large battle in the heaven realm 7 days later? Would another worldly catastrophe happen this time? Ji Wudao probably was not like the human ancestor. He only wanted to govern the world law. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. All of the cultivators in the world were paying attention to the heaven realm today. Meanwhile, in the heaven realm, countless powerful cultivators were gathering toward the continent where the heavenly court was located. That day, dazzling divine light flashed in the heaven realm, outside the heavenly court. A group of powerful figures appeared. They were all in the great emperor plane. After that, more divine light flashed in different directions. The strong figures of the 6 great forces had all arrived. They had no choice but to come. Since Ji Wudao had returned, they were destined to have this battle. Frightening divine might enveloped the heavenly court. Brilliant divine light descended from the heavenly court. Then a mighty group of strong figures arrived and scanned the 6 great forces. A brilliant figure appeared above the heavenly palace, bathing under the light of the world. He was incredible. It was Ji Wudao. Have you all thought carefully? Ji Wudao stood in the sky and looked down at everything. He spoke to the strong figures of the 6 great forces, not caring at all that there were seniors like the Buddha among them. Of the rulers of the 6 great forces, only Yi Qingyao, ruler of the Dark Court, had not come. Everyone else had arrived. In Qingju City, Hua Jiyu did not know anything happening in the world. No one told her either because they could not bear it. No one could bear to disturb her again. Graceful music continued to float above the serene Qingju Academy, sounding every day without stop. Hua Jiyu played the music quietly under the tree. She did not ask about the outside world, nor did anyone disturb her. She even put up a colorless realm barrier. This place belonged to her and the 2 trees. The 2 trees behind Hua Jiyu kept swaying extremely joyously as if they understood the music. The 2 trees were now entangled with each other. The tree that Xia Qingyuan had become was the tree of life. She kept pouring the power of life into the other tree. The days passed one by one. The vitality of Yi Futian's tree had become heavier, too, and it seemed to have a spirit now. When Hua Jiyu played, she could even hear the tree swaying. They were like pulsing music notes, a reply to her. Of course, this could also be Hua Jiyu's imagination. The Battle of the Heaven Realm shocked the world. After Ji Wudao returned, he showed immense strength. Donghuang Diyuan of the Divine Prefecture was able to control the divine power of the ancestral dragon and ancestral phoenix. She was not any weaker than the strongest of the former 6 great emperors. However, she had been forced back and injured by Ji Wudao's one attack. Ji Wudao's power crushed Donghuang Diyuan. Similarly, the Buddha's Buddhist techniques could not restrain Ji Wudao either. Jiyu Dongliu summoned a flood of spiritual demons and monsters, but they had all been defeated. Yi Futian's 4 great disciples could not hold up either. In that battle, Ji Wudao had defeated the strong figures from all the forces under the name of the Heavenly Emperor. He wanted to make them surrender, submit to the Heaven Realm, and view it as their master. He was not forced back until Devil Emperor Yu Sheng arrived with the Devil Abyss and fought against Ji Wudao. That battle had shaken the entire Heaven Realm, splitting the ground and sky. It had been like a duel of pinnacle features. Finally, the 2 called a truce. Neither could get an advantage over the other. Devil Emperor Yu Sheng led the strong figures from the various forces and retreated. Ji Wudao continued to guard the heaven realm. Both sides had their concerns. Thus, the heaven realm led by Ji Wudao and the great forces who protected the heavenly path formed an equilibrium. After the battle, Ji Wudao became the #1 figure of the current world. Devil Emperor Yu Sheng was second. Even though the Devil Realm had not entered this world and was its own world, the Devil Emperor still cared for this world and came to reinforce them at the critical moment. After all, he was brothers with the heavenly path and went through life and death together. In the heavenly court, Ji Wudao was cultivating with his eyes closed at the heavenly palace's top. He had swallowed a lot of strength while visiting the other universes and then swallowed the human ancestor. He had not fully digested the strength and combined it into his comprehension yet. Otherwise, he would not only be at this level. This also meant that he would become stronger and stronger. This was also why the chaotic heavenly swallowing method was so terrifying. However, Ji Wudao did not expect Yu Sheng to have control over the Devil Abyss's power and become the Devil Emperor. Even the chaotic heavenly swallowing method had trouble swallowing the billions of devil tribulations and would be penetrated and destroyed. Thus, they ended in a truce. Both stops discontinued the battle. Reading on mybo's.com please. Yu Sheng's abilities in this battle were probably close to the previous Devil Emperor now. This also pushed Ji Wudao to continue cultivating. It seemed that he had to wait some time to become stronger. Your Majesty, someone came to report to him at this time. Ji Wudao furrowed his brows and opened his eyes to scan the other. The person who came quickly lowered his head and knelt on one knee, saying, "Your Majesty, someone came from the outside world, requesting to see you. I told him to leave, but he said that there's something important related to the possession of this world. I don't dare to delay this." Ji Wudao nodded slightly after hearing his words and said, "Bring them here." "Yes, Your Majesty." The person bowed and retreated. A moment later, some strong figures of the great Emperor Plane with extraordinary temperaments arrived. They bowed slightly after seeing Ji Wudao. "Greetings, Heavenly Emperor. What is the matter?" Ji Wudao asked. "We come from the Empyrean. The immortal Emperor of Empyrean will arrive soon and unify this world. The immortal Emperor's divine order is that if the Heavenly Emperor wishes to submit to him and help His Majesty uniting this world, you may become an immortal king of this world," the newcomer said. Ji Wudao listened quickly. When he visited the other universes, he learned of the immortal Emperor of the Empyrean. He ruled over many universes and was known as the immortal Emperor of Empyrean. And now, he wanted to take over this world as well. He also wanted Ji Wudao to govern this world and give him the title of Immortal King. The Heavenly Emperor already wished to unify this world, so the timing is perfect. "We can help you," the other party continued to say. "That is logical." Ji Wudao nodded, and the few who had come quickly smiled, seeming extremely confident. However, Ji Wudao looked at them, and instantly, a horrifying aura shrouded the others directly. Their expressions dropped, and they stared at Ji Wudao. "Heavenly Emperor, what do you mean by this?" Ji Wudao extended a hand. The horrifying swallowing of divine power shrouded them. Instantly, their expressions turned to shock. They could feel their spirit souls being tugged out to be swallowed. They could not resist this force at all. "It is not your place to worry about our world matters." As soon as he spoke, the people let out pained cries. They were swallowed into the horrifying black vortex. They were immediately annihilated and disappeared. After Ji Wudao swallowed those people, he frowned and said, "If you meet cultivators from the outside world again, kill without mercy." His voice spread throughout the heavenly court, shocking the cultivators of the heavenly court. Countless months later, the city of the ruins was now the most prosperous main city in the world. At the moment, many strong figures were gathered in one part of the city. They were strong figures from various emperor-level forces and were all watching this area. This area had been sealed off because cultivators from the outside world entered this world from here. Recently, strong energy waves had come from this area. Strong figures from various forces all came to investigate. Someone suggested tearing the void and exiting, but it was rejected. If there were something outside, it would be too dangerous. It would be no different from suicide. However, the energy waves from this area were getting more and more frightening now. The sealed space here seemed to be getting unstable, as if an extremely frightening force was about to be unleashed. Right then, the sealed space shimmered with scary light. It looked extremely demonic, and all the strong figures of the Emperor-level forces were affected. "What is that?" someone asked. "I don't know. It seems that an outside force is going out of control." Some people's expressions were horrified. Just as they were speaking, a beam of blinding light descended. Then the horrible divine light destroyed the sealing power of this place directly. There were muffled booms, and the sky broke apart. A huge figure descended from the sky, passing through the broken space and coming to this world. The strong figures were all forced back. The blinding divine light made it practically impossible to open their eyes, but at this moment, they still withstood the stinging pain to stare at the monstrous figure that had descended. Their hearts pounded incessantly. That monstrous figure was like a city that came from the outside world. It was also like a boundless altar that had many super transmission matrices. It landed with the piercing divine light. The transmission matrices opened the world up, and many heavenly emperor figures descended from the sky. The gods of another world descended, coming to this world. The strong figures immediately sent what they saw back to their emperor-level forces. At that moment, all of the great forces were shaken. After Ji Wudao had returned and taken back the heaven realm, strong figures from the outside world had invaded them, wanting to conquer this world. The city of ruins was the first to be affected. The incoming strong figures controlled the main city with unstoppable speed, turning this city into their base in this world. It shocked the entire world. Since then, the world seemed to return to that chaotic era. Of course, they all realized that the strongest threat was from the outside world. The world that was invading them was known as the Empyrean, and the god they believed in was the immortal sovereign of Empyrean. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.